thanks for getting that ID meeting set.
Yes, it was helpful just to reach out to her directly. I don't know that her admin staff realize the urgency or the importance of it. But Julie Gay's already in the waiting room if we want another opinion on the presentation.
I'm sorry, I missed you. I'm sorry, I missed what you said. My headphones.
I said Julie Gay is already in the meeting room or the waiting room for this Zoom meeting. So if we want an additional opinion.
If we want an additional what?
Opinion on our presentations this morning.
Yeah.
We could invite her in.
Let's not. Good offer though. Good idea.
Thanks.
I heard there was a slight catastrophe this morning.
Yes, it was. Well, the first term that came to my head was near miss. Like if you're being shot at, there's a far miss and there's a near miss, and this was a near miss, almost fatal catastrophe this morning. But luckily it worked out. Say Chris is in the waiting room as well. Any need? Do you want to let him in here too or not? This is the Discovery Square video thing. No,
let's just get through this first. No, let's get through this first. Unless Allison invited him, I prefer just to get through this without a bunch of other opinions. Just want to see what we have. Did you send me the link, Cody? Links?
No, I will in just a moment. I was pulling them up and then we switched to Zoom.
Okay, so this is the first. This is the one that will be on. And sometimes RT wants to see faces, and so we actually don't use these, but I have them as backup. We've got the public comment period, chair's report, consent agenda. And then did you want the annual report to legislature, this one behind it? Okay.
Yep.
So that's that. Can I exit out?
Great.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's see here. So the metrics, Bill saw a small edit. So I'm waiting to throw in these two.
Okay. What's the last one then?
The last one is Kevin's slide.
Pilot to business approach. Okay, sounds good. No, it should say equitable economic development, not equity, equitable. Up on top. Thanks.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to stop share screen. So then we go into the project updates, or priority updates. So Heart of the City is first. This is the new slide deck from Jamie. Tell me when you want me to advance.
Okay, great. Hold on. I have to enlarge this a bit. Okay, next. Okay, next. Next. Great. Great. Rafael Lozano. I don't know if that's how his name is spelled. Hold on. L-O-Z-A-N-O. L-O-Z-A-N-O. Nope. A-N-O. There you go. Okay. Lozano Hammer. Okay. Great. Okay.
I'm just going to save this quick. I have, Bill just sent me the two WMBE graphics. Do you want to see those quick?
Yep.
Okay, 1 second. Okay.
Okay, great. Looks good.
That's what we have.
Can I see Kevin's last one just so I can see it again? Great. Okay, sounds good.
Okay. So then we have Discovery Square. Did Chris try to get into this or no, this meeting?
Yes, he's in the waiting room.
Can we just add him for this one quick, Patrick?
Well, let's go through the others then first.
Okay.
Or did you ask him to join?
Yeah, I wanted him to request control to see if the video worked.
Oh, gotcha. Let's get through the other ones. I just want to
Okay.
see everything.
So if we skip Discovery Square, then we go into transportation. So just tell me when you want me to advance.
Okay, next, next. Great. 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 Good. 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 Great. Okay, that one's a little tough to read, but it's okay. It's all good. It's all good.
Okay. And Cody, so you know, Catherine will request controls, and then is it Jarrett or Mona or somebody else? Like, I'm just wondering, like, they can take their own microphone off, but just to watch if somebody's trying.
Mona is going to be, Mona and Jarrett and Aaron all need to be able to be in a position to speak at any time throughout this. And there's Sylvia, I believe.
Okay. Yes, they'll have the opportunity to turn their mics and cameras on as they wish. It'll be the other people, the members of the public, that I'll be policing to make sure they don't. So no worries there. Patrick, I've got the shareable links to the board packet and the board one-pagers. For some reason, I'm not able to create and share a link to the presentations. So I could attach the presentations to the email I send you with the other two links, or
Wait, what, you can't send me the link to the OneDrive?
right.
There might be something goofy going on given what happened this morning.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
It's the one folder I can't create a link for at the moment.
Okay, so what are the solutions?
I could email you as attachments the 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 PowerPoints. They're all numbered and named. And then
What I really need is the annotated agenda and the board pack and the packet that we sent out to board members.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Okay, so private development updates. We have the brick apartments first.
Yeah.
Project update, and then a little bit larger view of the map,
Good.
and then the next steps.
Okay, great.
Okay. 1 second here while I pull up the next.
And Cody, while you're doing what you're doing, can you also text me Paul Williams' cell phone number? I can't seem to find it.
Yes.
So the downtown waterfront small area plan is next, and Cody, Patrick will be handing this over to Cindy, who will be presenting.
Yep, I've seen all of these. I'm good,
Okay.
Allison.
Sounds good. And then lastly, it's the marketing. I think Bill was wanting to do a trial. So can we let Chris in quick?
Yep.
Okay, can you let Chris in, Cody?
Yep. Jim Beer's in the waiting room as well. So we'll start seeing board members show up here.
Okay.
Okay, Chris, why don't you ask for controls, and we'll just kind of go through them quickly down to, it just takes a second here.
So that's me.
Yep.
Let me get into presentation mode. And
So is there any sound with this?
no,
Okay.
Yeah, actually Josh speaking is the sound.
the dulcet tones of Josh Johnson. How's that? So it's laggy, for sure, doing it this way.
It's okay. I mean, I don't know what better solution we have, so.
The only other solution would be, I don't know what just happened there, but why don't you take it back? The only other option would be to have me show the, oh, are you doing it now?
Sorry, what are you trying to do? Do you want me to exit out of this?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and take control of the screen again?
Okay.
It's just a little tricky doing video.
Yeah, it didn't look like it was like stopping or like it was a continuous video for me.
It did not, or it did?
It did not like stop or anything. Like it didn't look like there was a lag for me.
Yeah, I was just comparing to what it looks like running off my computer. So it was slow, but if it wasn't bad, then we do it. The other option would be to stop having my deck would come from my desktop and I would control it, and then we'd have to stop sharing and resharing, but I don't think we want to do that. If that looks fine, it's fine with me.
Let's see the rest of the slides then, as long as we're at it, 10, 11, and so forth.
Let's see. Go to the next slide. That's it. And then I finish with back to this as a finishing slide.
Okay, great.
Do you want to, so I was going to ask you, Patrick, I was going to pause after the Discovery Square economic development portion of it for any conversation or questions before I jumped into Discovery Walk.
Yes, yes.
And then I was going to, let's see, stop. I was going to, after each one of these, I was going to pause. So pause after this one, pause after this one, pause after this one, or do you want to pause at the end?
No, that's good. That's good. That's good to do that, yes.
Okay.
So Chris,
Yep.
you really have two presentations. One
Yeah.
is the Discovery Square economic development, and then public realm. So sort of treat them mentally as two.
Yeah.
And in the first one, you are telling them that we are continuing to make progress, and you asked us. So again, what I'm trying to get us to is to always remind them that we're doing the work they asked us to do. So on the first one, we are progressing, have made a lot of progress, including Discovery Square 2 underway. And
Yeah.
you've asked us to work collaboratively in the community around entrepreneurial and startup.
Yep. So diversify, collaborate.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
On the second one, on Discovery Walk, you asked us to develop a, signature place that connects the downtown to Soldiers Field. We're making great progress. There's a couple of things that we are looking for your feedback and opinion on, which is what we will get to.
Yep. So that's sort of the lead into the two sections, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, it helps them understand, why am I listening? What am I trying to listen for in this presentation?
And
Okay.
in case it matters, Exact Sciences will not be doing a media release, but I'm going to say that Exact Sciences has signed a lease in the building. I'll be saying that this morning.
Okay. Does Brooks' family still have part of Exact Science, or is that a relationship that no longer exists? Do you know?
I actually don't know the legal relationship. Her dad was, they probably do, because her mom is still alive, and I imagine he was still holding on to his shares of Exact, but that's speculation.
Okay. Okay, Allison, anything else?
Yeah, can you, not with Discovery Square. I
I'll
think good.
jump out then.
Yeah, sounds good.
Well, we're 10 minutes
9:20.
from go time, so.
Yeah,
Can you
I'm just
let
gonna-
Bill in, Cody? Do you see Bill in the waiting room?
Letting him in now.
Okay, and then I'll tell him we just have a minute here because we need to let in board members.
Good morning.
Hey,
Hi
Bill,
there.
you want to ask for control in advance? We have some board members in the waiting room, so we'll hop out of this
Okay.
in a minute.
And where do I ask for that again?
At the top of your screen, there should be a
Two options.
remote control.
Request remote control.
Yep, perfect.
Request.
Yep, and I'm approving, and it just takes a second. So kind of like have your cursor, and as soon as you see yourself moving it, then you've got, yep, you're controlling it now. So you can put it into presentation mode or keep it like this, however, and then you should be able to advance through here.
And Patrick, do you want our mug shots on the screen?
while you present your faces on it.
Yeah, do you want that?
Yeah, no, I want your faces on live when you're talking. Yeah.
Okay.
So is it, you're clicking through? It seemed okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, just view out. Okay, I've got it. You can get rid of
Okay,
it.
so yeah, as soon as it's done, then I'll just kind of, I can then take my cursor and if you stop moving it, and then I'll stop sharing.
Yep. So I just have to click for request once, and then you take over from there after I'm done.
Yep, yeah, I'll just kind of move the cursor. Yep. Okay, well, we've
Thank
got,
you. And you
yep,
got updated infographics for the metrics?
I did. I threw them into the slide deck.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay.
Is there any, okay, Cody, you can let people in as a, I mean, at least let our board members in.
Will do.
Thank you.
Hi, Kathleen.
Hello,
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm well.
Morning, everybody.
Hey, Jim, how are you?
Good. See if I can start my video.
Yeah, because we want to see. There you go.
I look all right?
You look great. Why do you have 3 screens behind you?
Oh, that's for, I also do taxes for Smith Schaefer as a seasonal, so we're with the COVID thing.
Got it.
So, what, I should probably try and get that, what do they say? Like fuzzy. How do you do that?
Oh, you know what? I do know how to do that. Kind of. See that little arrow at the bottom next to stop video?
Yeah.
Okay, press the little arrow.
Okay. Choose visual background.
Right.
Okay.
And then one of them should be blur
Yeah. Video.
or something.
Video. Yeah. Let's touch up my appearance. Wow. Where's blurry? Turn off my video. Hide non-participants. Spotlight the video. Display up to 4. No, that's not it. Virtual background. Widescreen. Touch up meetings. No, it doesn't do it.
Well, maybe this one doesn't have a blur thing. Some of them do.
Yeah, maybe this one doesn't have it.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. I just think you look like a high-tech kind of guy with all those screens.
Yeah, you know that. Yeah, you know me. High tech. Mr. High Tech, that's what they call me.
There you go.
So did you get my response to that letter for the
I did.
markup?
And did you get my response?
Oh, I haven't looked yet.
Okay, I just shot it over about 15 minutes ago.
Oh, what, I probably won't say nothing.
Okay.
Probably best to just leave it go.
All right. Sometimes it's good just to say stuff and then let it go.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, yeah, I got your response. Yeah.
Okay.
What else is going on?
Oh, like everybody else, just waiting out this COVID mess.
No kid.
Yeah. Hey, Jim, how are you? You're on mute.
You're right, I'm on mute.
There you go.
Morning, I didn't put a tie on. I should have done that.
I don't think Jim, well, Jim Beer has one on.
Yeah, it's hard to know.
Yeah.
I better button up my shirt though. Did you get the letter Carmen sent you, Kathleen?
I already responded. I was so delighted. I just burst out laughing when I opened it up. I did. I just burst out laughing.
We are going to move
You are?
next fall. And so Carmen is sorting through 37 years of pictures
Oh, my Lord.
and boxes. And she came across this and she said, you know, I think there's a woman that would like to have this.
This for everyone, Jim's wife, Carmen, taught my sister Audrey in kindergarten. And
Oh,
so Carmen sent a picture of my sister Audrey in kindergarten to me, and I'm going to pass it on to my sister with the nicest note, Jim. But when I opened it up the other day, the biggest smile on my face, because that's really how I think of my sister now, who is like 57. But I think of her in that little kindergarten dress.
And so, Jim, there's going to be some pictures coming from you for you too.
I don't think you have anything on me.
You don't know what I found.
Well, your cousin Johnny, he might have a couple of me. Oh,
That's
boy,
another-
that's awful bright in my background there.
Yeah, what are you? Are you?
Oh, I'm out in the sunroom here and at home, and it's really bright in here. I don't know. I'm gonna have to.
You sort of look like God with all that.
Is that any better? Not really. I'm gonna move to another room.
Oh, no, Jim, stay right where you are.
Stay where you are. We like that
Yeah.
golden glow behind you.
Yeah.
I'll move to another room here. Rita, I'm coming in here. It's too bright in there. Say hi to all the DMCC board.
Morning. So I didn't get my board book, so I'm going to be looking at all of this on my iPhone, so it should be fun.
Hey, RT, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
I'm around there.
Morning, Mr. Rybeck.
How you doing, guys?
Pretty good.
Let's see here.
Mr. Williams, I just sent you an email.
Really? Well, I'll look for it. How you doing?
Well, don't tell the rest of the group what I said to you.
No pressure there, I guess, huh?
Okay, are we all set, folks? Everybody
No.
test their mics?
RT, we need 2 more for a quorum.
Okay, we will wait on that for just a second.
Much better, James.
Thank you. Too much light in our room. We got too many windows in this house.
Or them all.
Hi, Brooke. There's our new city council person for the people that haven't met her yet.
Good morning, Commissioner Beer and everyone.
Hey, Brooke. Very
Morning,
exciting to have you here.
Thank you. Glad to
Welcome.
be here. Thank you.
Do we call you Madam President? Is that how it works?
That would be just lovely. No, just kidding. Brooke is fine.
But yeah, don't call me commissioner neither.
Oh, okay.
Kathleen, I
Well,
think that's our quorum.
Okay, good. We have our quorum. Just before we begin, I'd like to ask members of the public to please mute yourself and turn your camera off. We would love to see you, and we will as soon as we can all be together. The reason we're asking you to turn your camera off is so that those of us who are in the meeting can see each other. We're very happy you're here, and that would help us if you could do that. So I want to call the meeting to order and ask Kathleen if you could call the roll, please.
Happy to, Mr. Chair. And again, I'm just going to go quickly down the names in alphabetical order. Beer,
Here.
Campbell,
Here.
Carlson,
Here.
Doherty, Norton, Ryback,
Here.
Williams,
Here.
Wheelock.
Here, sorry, I had to unmute.
Thanks, Pam. Mr. Chair, there are 6 present.
Thank you very much. Well, you were very good at doing that. We did our first action, and our second one is to welcome our new council president. We're really, really excited to have you here for Carlson. And I wonder if you would mind just giving us a hello, and if you have any thoughts just as you come on, that would be great. You have something all of us don't have, and you're going to lose it every second, which is a fresh perspective. So we're very, very excited you're here, and would just love to ask you to
Introduce
say
myself.
hi, whatever you choose to tell us.
Sure. Well, hello, everyone. I've had the pleasure of at least exchanging emails with several of you, and Mayor Ryback. I was a Minneapolis resident while you were mayor in Minneapolis. So I'm sorry we haven't connected individually yet, but look forward to having follow-up conversations with each of you. I'll just give a quick background on myself, just so you know where I'm coming from. I did grow up in Rochester and moved back here about 5 years ago to raise my kids and really focus my work in a community that I'm really deeply passionate about. My background's in urban planning, public health, and human services. So really coming at this work from the perspective of thinking about how our environment, including our built environment, influences our ability to live healthy and healthy lives and really thrive. So I've worked at the Minnesota Department of Health. I helped pass our state health reform legislation in 2009 and launch our statewide health improvement program while I was there. I worked for a couple of years at Blue Cross. In fact, I think while Pam Wheelock was in interim leadership there. And then about 8 years ago, I launched my own consulting firm in health and human services. I do planning, assessment, evaluation, and systems change, and have really found a niche in working across healthcare, government, and community-based organizations to figure out how we really collectively improve our communities. So while I've stepped into this role and reduced some of my project work with my business, I do continue to work on a few projects, including here in Rochester. I'm also working with the Minneapolis Health Department and Minneapolis Public Housing and several health systems in Minneapolis around thinking about how we work with the high-rise residents who are part of public housing to identify ways to improve their lives. And I'm also partnering with Diversity Council on a health equity project in Duluth right now. So I'm working across Minnesota, but really hope to bring my deep community perspective and experience working across different groups within Rochester, in the nonprofit community, in different sectors of government and in healthcare, and my experience and expertise to this role. So I'm so grateful to be here and be part of this team, and here we go.
Great. Well, I'm sorry to have chased you out of Minneapolis, but it's certainly Rochester's game, so we're thrilled by that. You know, could I ask you a question that is similar to the one I asked Mayor Norton when she came off a campaign? You know, when you're out in campaigns, you hear a lot and all of that. Anything particular that you picked up in the campaign about the way people of the community are feeling about DMC, or something that we should be mindful of?
Yeah, I really think people are leaning on me to bring the broader community perspective and keep the DMC work focused on an initiative that touches and improves the lives of people who not only visit here or work downtown, but the rest of our community. So in conversations I've had so far with the team members of DMC and within the city, I really like to think about how the work happening across DMC is a system of efforts that connect together to collectively improve our community, and being thoughtful about why we're choosing certain work through that community lens and using an equity lens, and how to message around why it's beneficial. So I think there's some miscommunication or gaps in communication that I really hope to be a voice and call out when I'm seeing those gaps.
Great. Well, that's going to be really helpful, and as we go along. Well, thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
So let's move to, we've gotten so good at.
Mr. Chair, sorry, I wonder if we couldn't ask Council President Carlson to also introduce a new city administrator.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I
Sure.
skipped that part. Go ahead.
Yes.
Yes.
Allison, Ms. Elms, you're on, right? Yes.
I am.
Well, there she is. Well, I am so pleased that I get to kick off my role in the DMC board at the same time as our new city administrator, Allison Zelms. She is off to a great start, 11 days in or 9 days in. She's really up and running, and I've had the chance to now meet her in person a few times and work with her in preparation for a few of our council meetings. And can't even tell she's brand new. She's just really off and running. So we're thrilled to have you. She's coming from a deputy manager role in Mankato and is about to make Rochester her permanent full-time home. So we're looking forward to her transition here, and just, she brings really great experience from around the country. We're lucky to have her.
Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I won't take up your meeting, but I'm very excited to be joining Rochester at such a time in history, and looking forward to working with our partners at DMC and elsewhere to make sure that we keep moving forward and capitalize on, what the silver linings of what we may have learned over the last few years, so that we can keep moving forward and building stronger as we go into the future. So thank you for the lovely introduction, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, welcome, Allison. It's great to have you here. In the founding documents of the Destination Medical Center, there's a clause that said that our main goal is to keep the city administrator from ever being bored. So we hope to hope to be in a deep partnership with you, but you will not be bored in this work. Great, welcome. It's great to have you here. Okay, so let's move to the approval of the agenda. Kathleen, could you please call the roll?
Happy to, Mr. Chair. And I note that Mayor Norton has joined us. So if there's no objection, I'm going to add her to the roll call as well.
Welcome, Mayor Norton.
So I would like to call the roll for the approval of the agenda. Beer.
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
Carlson.
Aye.
Doherty. Norton.
Aye.
Ryback.
Here.
Williams.
Aye.
Wheelock.
Aye.
That's seven votes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Let's do the same with the approval of the minutes. Moved. Do I have a second?
So moved.
Second.
Kathleen, could you please call the roll?
Yep. Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yep, works.
Beer.
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
Carlson.
Aye.
Doherty. Norton.
Aye.
Ryback.
Here.
Williams.
Aye.
Wheelock.
Aye.
That's 7 votes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we will open the public comment. As people who follow this know, we do this at each meeting. We ask people to give us your name and to ideally keep it within 2 minutes, and we will gently remind you at 2 minutes and slightly less gently at 2.5 minutes. So we're happy to have you here. And Cody, you run this piece of it. Do we have anyone signed up for the public comment period?
Mr. Chair, there are currently no members of the public signed up for the public comment period, but we'd welcome any members of the public currently attending the meeting to speak up if they'd like to address the board. Would anyone like to do so?
We'll give you a minute in case somebody's trying to get unmuted. Okay, hearing none. right? Okay, so
Right.
then we will, thank you, Cody. We will move to close the meeting and just remind people that you're always welcome at the beginning of any meeting to give us your thoughts. Did I hear a sound there? Or?
Sorry, that was me, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay, good. All right, good. So now we'll move to the chair's report. This is a meeting of real first because we have a new council president, we have a new administrator, and this is Patrick Sieb's first meeting leading the effort. I even got a text from Lisa this morning wishing us good luck. So she stayed involved. Patrick, we're just thrilled to have you leading this. And one of the beautiful things is you don't have to get up to speed. And the other is that you have been so central to this work that we really have you rolling. So just thank you, Patrick. And we're thrilled to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your work. We're going to have a couple of things that are going to go on here. We're going to do the annual report to the legislature. We're going to get an update on. And we're also going to be talking about the transit experience. You didn't hear me say we're going to talk about how to ride a bus. The reason for that is that the transit experience is something broader. And the reason we want to put this in experience is it's not just getting on a bus, and a bus isn't exactly a bus anymore. We want to think about these as vehicles that are more than a bus. You know, in transit talk, they talk about rolling stock, which sounds kind of like cattle with round legs or something. But I want us to, when we're having this discussion, stop thinking bus and start thinking innovative vehicles that can meet the unique needs of this. Experience is going to be a really important word as well, because it's the experience of trying to say to somebody who's maybe now driving in, hey, we can give you a better experience that includes how you arrive, how you get to your office. So that, I think, will be an important part of the discussion. Then we're going to take a break. And then this afternoon, we're going to go into something we've done in past years, which is this joint meeting of the city council and the county commissioners and the DMC, EDA boards. And it's the one chance each year we've got to all get together and talk about our joint goals. So I'm very much looking forward to that. So that's what will be, I think, a pretty fruitful meeting here. All that being said, why don't we move on to the consent agenda? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, Kathleen, you want to call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I got the, Wheelock is the maker. Who is the second?
Jim.
Sorry. Okay, thank you. On the consent agenda, Beer,
Aye.
Campbell,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Doherty, Norton,
Aye.
Ryback,
Here?
Williams,
Aye.
Wheelock.
Aye.
Thank you. There are 7 votes aye. And Mr. Chair, we were going so quickly that we didn't get a maker and a seconder for the approval of the agenda, which has already been approved. So could someone make the motion and second it?
I think I made the motion.
Thank
And I
you.
seconded.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, trying to keep everyone straight here.
I will try to slow down as well. Okay, we're going to now move to the annual report to the legislature, and I'm going to ask Kathleen to describe the report. And I wonder if afterwards, knowing that the council's approved it, I think Monday, if Mayor Norton and Council President Carlson, if you have any comments, we'd sure welcome that at the end, because as we hear this report, we want to do what we can to understand where the city leadership is at on that. So Kathleen, could you give us the report?
Mr. Chair, the draft February 15th report is before you. It is an annual report required by statute. The statute specifies what elements have to be reported, and so those are contained in the report. The statute also specifies to whom the report goes, and it's various committee chairs, commissioners, board chairs, and that's why the laundry list of 2 pages of addressees is long. And so the report asks for various things like have there been bonds issued? What is the status of various projects, et cetera? And It is a joint DMCC City of Rochester report. And so the city council took it up, I believe, on Monday, and they made a couple amendments that I forwarded around yesterday. And in order to conform what the city did with what we have in front of us, we should, if it is satisfactory, the DMCC should adopt those amendments as well. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. While we're entertaining questions, Mayor, Council President, is there anything you want to add about what reaction we had in the discussion at the city?
Sure, I'm happy to. Mayor Norton, please do add. The only real thing we focused on was around the language related to the Chateau Theater, which Kathleen referenced. The amendments are directly in that paragraph under completed projects. From the council's perspective, or some members of the council, there was a question about whether the Chateau Theater is actually completed, and we just proposed adding some language that makes it clear that the initial proposed work related to the interim use is what is completed. So that was what we focused our discussion on. I think there's some passion and energy with council members to continue exploring or evaluating what the work looks like with the Chateau Theater down the road. But because that's not formally proposed yet, we agreed that it was fine to include it under completed projects as long as that language was tweaked.
Right. So if I can read through that a little bit, I imagine they're concerned that we would say, okay, that's done, and we don't have any higher aspirations for the theater.
Yeah, we wanted to be clear that that was not the case, that there are discussions to be had down the road about a longer term use for that facility. We haven't formally moved forward on that yet. So it shouldn't be listed under projects underway, because we aren't actively working towards our next plan. Is that correct, Mayor Norton?
Yes, I would agree, Mr. Chair, that whether we continue to move forward with the initial committee's work or perhaps, and probably more appropriately, draw some additional people together in the coming years, they acknowledge that we do have a contract for the next 3 to 5 years that we will move forward with, and at a future time, have a more robust discussion about the Chateau Theater.
Yeah, I just want to say, from my point of view, I'm really glad, really glad you brought this forward, because I think we're thrilled that there's use in the theater, and every community event we've had of any kind that asks for any input has very high aspirations for the Chateau, and I just think that message is definitely heard, and at least from my viewpoint, and I know from the conversation of this body, it's very much shared that this is a real landmark. We want to make sure it has an even better future. Yeah. Other comments?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Just so from the bigger picture, I guess what I took away from the report, and again, I know this is an annual report, but I mean, the certified number, which is important, was 272 million in investment. 139 of that came from Mayo, 133 from other private sources. So my takeaway is that it was and the language in the report, and I actually read the whole report, which is a big piece of work. Kudos to everybody who gets this done, because it's a heavy lift, obviously. But my takeaway is that it was a good year despite the pandemic. And that is remarkable. And again, I had a ton of work going on across all of the jurisdictions to keep these things on track. Discovery Square, Discovery 1 and 2, Heart of the City, Transit, the 5-year update process, the economic analysis, which again, I thought was really some remarkable work. So I just wanted to highlight that this is a big deal to submit this thing every year. And behind it, in fact, is some really good work, and that was kind of my takeaway from the report. So bravo to one and all.
Really helpful. Other comments?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure who's queued up here, but I just want to say this is the way it should work to get feedback in this process from the city of Rochester or the city and county, depending on circumstances. And I just really appreciate the way in which they've advanced in inquiry and a desire to continue a dialogue about the highest and best use of the public funds that are available to achieve our mission. I think clearly now is not the environment where we can fully explore those kinds of opportunities. And of course, with all of our investment decisions, we'll have to make some decisions about opportunity costs. If we invest here, what can't we do to achieve our mission? But I just really appreciate the feedback and would be thrilled to make a motion to accept and endorse the report as amended by the city of Rochester.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Very good, thank you. One final comment I just wanted to make, and it builds on both Pam and Paul's comments here. You know, when you go through that whole long list of people there, as Kathleen said, what it's a page and a half of people it's addressed to, it really reminds you that we've got a big constituency. You know, I'm appointed and several of us are appointed by the governor, and that means that we are answerable to people across the state. Why should this historically large investment in one city in the state happen? What justifies that? And the deal was that if the state made this investment, there would be investment from both Mayo and the private sector that would grow this and not only have this be about dollars, but it'd be about community building. Well, I think with a pretty straight face, we can walk in and say that we're delivering on the promise there. And certainly for the state, this is a really good deal. And this isn't the nicest thing to say about a state that I love, Wisconsin, but I do think if we want to look at the history of this, compare this to what Wisconsin did with Foxconn. Wisconsin gave a seemingly blank check to a business that didn't have deep roots in that community, and they gave all the money without a commitment the money would come back. In this case, it's very different. An institution grounded for decades in this state, and a city that was in a partnership, and the state went into a promise where the public money would not flow unless the private money flowed first. And so that's the deal that's taking place. And so I signed that with a big smile on my face because we are delivering. We got a lot more work to do, but that's good. Seeing no other comments? Going once, going twice.
Mr. Chair, could I make sure I understand the amendments? What I have in front of me is this motion is, the report is amended to incorporate the city comments. And then from President Carlson right just now, I understood that the Chateau Theater section should be moved to the projects underway, or?
No. We
Okay.
kept it under completed because of the
Okay.
qualifying language around it.
Okay, I just wanted to check that. Thank you.
Mhm.
And the third one is just a clerical error that is in the report, which I want to change. In that, under transit projects, one of the bullet points says active community resource center. It should say active commuter resource center, and I will just make that clerically. I'll correct it. So if the maker of the motion accepts all that as friendly, then I think we're good.
I do.
Thank you.
You know, to Council President Mayor Norton, if you wanted to move that we move the Chateau from completed to
I don't
underway,
think so. We had a very long discussion at the board table and we settled here, please.
Good, you're good. Okay, I got it. Okay, so good. So why don't we move Kathleen to call the roll?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Beer,
Aye.
Campbell,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Doherty, Norton,
Aye.
Ryback,
Here,
Williams,
Aye.
and Wheelock.
Aye.
That is 7 votes, Mr. Chair.
okay. I have noted that in my haste, I keep saying here when I should be saying aye, but I'm glad you've gotten that. We're going to move to the metrics. We do this each meeting before the project updates because while projects are important, hitting the goals are more important. We have metrics across the effort, as you see in the letter, obviously we just sent, but we ask each time for Patrick to take a deep dive into one metric to kick us off.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. I'm going to turn this topic over to Kevin Bright from our team and a colleague from the city, Jory Johnson. But before I do that, I want to say that in all of the reports that we are going to provide you, what we are trying to do is play back to you what we think we've heard from you in terms of your expectations. And we're going to be seeking guidance as we are continuing to advance these. And so you'll hear that in this metrics, and you'll hear it in subsequent presentations as well. So with that, Kevin Bright from our team is on video, and he will introduce this and invite our colleague, Jory Johnson.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. Thanks, DMC Board, for the opportunity to speak to this important work. Today, we wanted to provide an update on our women, minority, and business enterprise work as part of our developing strategy around developing an equitable approach for economic development as part of our overall project. So to start, we'll have a quick update on the goals associated with the targeted business participation work and some of the strategies that have been developed in order to meet those targets. And then from there, a little bit of an update on some of our strategic direction around that equitable economic development approach. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jory Johnson, teammate from the city.
Good morning. Thank you, Kevin. And good morning, board members. I want to remind you that I was in front of you speaking last spring about increasing our targeted business and workforce goals. Thank you for your support on that. The City Council did approve those goals in June. Although we were already underway for contracting on most of the projects in 2020, we did see an increase in construction on the minority workforce participation last year. We went up from about 15% to nearly 17% last year of the minority workforce participation in construction. We also had an incredible participation by women on our professional services. Nearly 50% of the work hours were performed by women. On the transit-oriented development study, there was 65% of the workforce were women. And then on the rapid transit, architecture and engineering, we had 27% women participating. Also in 2020, we implemented a new tracking system for the payroll and workforce reporting. That was LCP Tracker. This makes reporting much easier and more accurate. We also improved tracking which contractors were on site and who were reporting or who weren't reporting, which is non-compliance. So we're improving on our accuracy of reporting. So tracking the performance and results monthly and sharing all the results with all of our teammates, the construction project managers, and all the contractors has been strategic to improving the performance as well. I just want to mention a few strategies we are implementing on both targeted business and workforce. We are co-hosting a workshop tomorrow, actually, to help businesses get certified. We have a dozen or so participating, and we are also offering Spanish translation at the workshop tomorrow. We're coordinating this workshop with MnDOT and Minnesota Department of Human Rights, so we appreciate their support on that. In March, we'll be co-hosting a bidding and bonding workshop for small businesses to learn more about bidding on DMC projects and how to obtain the bonding they need. I've also been working closely with Knutson Construction on the Discovery Walk project to make sure that we are not only achieving the goals, but exceeding for targeted business on that upcoming project. For workforce participation, we are implementing a new requirement requiring workforce participation plans from bidders on our projects so that they can plan how they are going to employ women and minorities in their workforce ahead of time, not just during the project, but we have more influence ahead of time. We're also, we hosted last month in January an inclusive workforce participation planning workshop. we had over 100 organizations register to attend. And we really appreciate Winona State University helping us plan and host that event. We are also sponsoring the construction trades training through workforce development. So this program helps people who are looking for great paying careers in construction, get the training, get interviews, and get placed. It also helps companies recruit and train the diverse workforce. So we're really excited to be partnering with Workforce Development, and I appreciate your support, your approval of my work plan on targeted business and workforce participation so that we can achieve these goals. Does anyone have any questions or suggestions at this time?
Mr. Chair, question?
Yes, go ahead, Paul.
So actually, Jory, can you go back to the chart? The chart has, this is great. This is actually even more current information than what I had in my board packet. So I just wanted to focus on these numbers a little bit more. Just literally a definitional question. So when you say targeted businesses, that is the equivalent of the MBE, DBE businesses and the goals for their, so the contractors of color, right? They're disadvantaged business, women, minority-owned businesses. That's the same thing, right?
It is. The designation DBE comes from Minnesota United, the MNUCP program, and the TGED is through the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. So it is for businesses that are owned and operated by women, minorities, or other disadvantaged people.
Right. Okay, great. And again, it just is stunning numbers to see, and especially the 2020 performance for women participation. I mean, our goal, I think, obviously there was 6%. I mean, it's fabulous. And the professional services and the construction performance is pretty remarkable. As you think about our goals, right, for the next 3 years, based on our, you're always, it's like in sales, you don't want to, have too big of a year because then they set your number, right? Even higher than that the next year. But how do you all feel about the goals for women, workforce participation, minority workforce participation, kind of based on how we've done here in the last couple of years? And it looks like we're pretty aligned around the DBE, MBE targeted business goals. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I think, I want to build on that because you're totally right that good performance gets people to set the goals higher. However, I think one of the things that is sometimes a good metric on this is reflective of the community. And so if we took, for instance, the minority participation goal of 15%, how does that connect to the population?
That's a great question. Especially because it's African American Heritage Month right now, and I really have been digging into who has been participating, and I really think we have room for improvement with African Americans participating in construction on our projects. We have about a 7% African American population in Rochester, and we have just over 1% of African Americans participating in our construction workforce. So I have reached out to NAACP, and they are supportive of doing some more finding of why, right? Why and what we can do to increase the participation of African Americans in our workforce here locally.
Mr. Chair, one of the disadvantages of Zoom is that we don't have the raise your hand feature, and I think Mayor Norton and Council President Carlson have both visually raised their hands. So sorry to interrupt.
And I have to apologize. I'm using another format here, and I'm not getting every face on this. So please, just when you want to talk, just say, just yell out RT or Mr. Chair or whatever. and I'll get that. So
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So
Yeah,
thank you. So,
I
go ahead, Mayor. And
I'll
then
put my
Council
hand down and just yell. Thank you. You're really getting to the point that I wanted to make, and I've made it in past years, and I really do appreciate Paul's comment. And one of the things we have these arbitrary numbers that we set, and I think it's great to have set a bar high and keep moving forward. I think that's the right thing to do. I worry that we aren't necessarily measuring the workforce participation, the pool from which we have to choose, and setting our goals relative to that too. Or as Jory Johnson just mentioned, changing through recruitment and training the percentage that we have in the industries from which to pull. So enlarging the pool so that it makes us more able to reach the goal that we've set. So that was one issue. And then the other was appreciating the work that's being done locally. And I know, Mr. Chair, you mentioned the word, I believe it was you mentioned the word community, or maybe it was Paul, but also making sure that we're employing as many local businesses and employees as we can before we reach beyond our community to reach some of these goals. So just a couple other things that come into play when we do this work that I wanted to mention.
Got it. Council President?
Sure. Many good points already that I have been jotting down as we go. So thank you, Mayor. You brought up some of my points. Mayor Ryback, or Chair Ryback, you mentioned having goals that are reflective of the makeup of our community, which is really where I was going. There are a lot of nuances in these numbers that we don't just get from grouping minority-owned businesses or minority participants in our workforce together. And I think being really thoughtful about our strategies based on how we're breaking down those numbers even further. So Jory, I appreciate you calling out our Black and African American community members, because there's potentially some different ways of working with community to build workforce opportunities and training and building that pool, as Mayor Norton said, compared to working with recent immigrant refugees who it's just potentially some other thoughts and strategies. So I've had great conversations lately with our local NAACP and several leaders in our Somali community, both of which expressed that increased economic opportunity and having job trainings and capacity building and growing the opportunity from being even eligible for these types of contracts is really in their interest. And I know that's a community effort. It requires partnership with workforce development and READY and others in the community. But I think if we're taking that holistic approach and having targets that then reflect a community effort, not just what the city or DMC can do, is where I would like to see this going, as we're breaking down really thoughtfully, targeting strategies that work best and we can learn from communities we're trying to work with to drive those strategies. That's the direction I'd like to see us go down the road.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can just weigh in with one more point on this. I'm really thrilled to see us talking about the nuance and the breaking this down. I mean, one of the best tools in diversity and inclusion work is in fact to kind of deconstruct your numbers and to really look specifically at different sub-communities, sub-populations. And I just want to reinforce, let's not be afraid to do that and to be transparent and to put in the effort to really tailor different strategies to different communities, including hiring local, which is fabulous. This is really important work. It's a huge investment by the state in this community. And again, that sets the stage for why it's important to make sure that this benefits all. So bravo.
And Mr. Chair and Paul, it's worth mentioning, we did just hire a diversity, equity, and inclusion director who will start mid-February, who can be an asset and help us on that. So I thought I should mention that as well. It's a new hire and we're very excited.
One of the things that I would encourage that new hire to do is to reach out to someone who is a national expert on this work, who would be the first person I'd call, and most people around the country probably happens to be Paul Williams. So I think that would be a really good conversation. Two quick comments. One on the local piece. I think as I recall the discussions we had from the beginning, we were going to track that. And so can we, by the next meeting, just come back with how we respond to that and whether we're going to be tracking that? Patrick, do you want to say something about that now, or should we just come back?
Yeah, I'm not prepared to provide that. We did, in fact, commit to that when we did the bidding for Heart of the City. And so we can reflect that back, but it's a larger strategy. And I think as this conversation moves along, I just want to compliment the transition that's been happening in this effort from a compliance sort of documentation to a more proactive moving this along in terms of going upstream, if you will, to grow the number of people in disadvantaged markets to participate. And it does go to this last slide in this section that we wanted to share, which is we really believe, we interpret your commitment to the WMBE as a larger commitment around equitable economic development. And so we want you to know that this is really a building block. The work that Jory is doing is really a building block for a much larger commitment that we understand from you around equitable economic development. And Kevin, maybe just say a word about each of these.
Sure. So the first bullet on here is about the community co-design process that we piloted up for the Discovery Walk project that you'll hear a little bit more about today, actually. But an interest in kind of carrying that from a pilot process to just kind of how we do business for infrastructure projects and how we kind of create an inclusive engagement process with community here to help inform our project approach moving forward and what would work for the community, but also the visitor and worker populations here in Rochester. So we're keen on working more on that too. And key part of that is developing further and deeper community relationships in order to help make those community co-design processes, but other work as beneficial as possible and as inclusive as possible. So we're continue to work with nonprofit consortium, social service organizations. We're excited for the DEI director that Mayor Norton mentioned to get started and kind of deepen these relationships and this work with Jory as well as we continue moving forward and implementing infrastructure projects. The third key part of this is housing that we've heard quite a bit from board members and how the DMC can play a role in realizing the downtown housing targets that were incorporated in the Transit Circulator Economic Development Research, as well as the Maxfield Community Study that was just updated this past month, which we're interested in kind of bringing those results for your benefit too in a future meeting. And then finally, as a result of the community co-design, these deeper community relationships and partnerships that we're developing, being sure that we're applying what we're hearing to projects at scale and not just applying the listening that we're hearing for a particular project or a particular co-design group to that one project, but kind of standardizing what we're hearing in order to help inform and create a more equitable and inclusive approach for all the infrastructure projects that we're working on. So just 4 things that we're developing more in kind of the direction that, as Patrick said, we've heard from you and starting to embellish upon here in this upcoming year.
One other. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Council President.
No, thank you so much, Kevin. You're singing my language here on this slide, and I really appreciate the housing part of this because how you might not think of it directly, but of course, housing affects workforce. And so if we're trying to build capacity within our local community or bring people to live in our community that can hold these contracts and opportunities, we need to have places where people can live affordably and work here. So I just really appreciate this holistic, thoughtful approach and again, the deep community engagement to drive the work forward. So thank you.
One of the things that we talked about early on, and I think it's worth bringing back up here, is that this is a scale that is unprecedented in this part of the state and really in most parts of the country. But if you think about especially that local issue, one of the disconnects here is that we want to get more work locally. We want to get more women-led, more organizations led by BIPOC populations. All of this, it gets more complicated because it's hard to find the people who have experience in something that has not been a precedent on its scale. I'm being awkward about that, but basically what I'm arguing for is to really being very, very clear about unbundling projects or bid packages, the smaller we get, the more diversity. And Patrick has, and Lisa before, have been very responsive as I talked about that. I think we have to continue to do that because we also, I think, have to look at the issue of working capital. At the Minneapolis Foundation, before I got there, they were involved in creating working capital for businesses of color to compete to build the US Bank Stadium. And one of the reasons there was such a high number there was because there was access to working capital. So I think we ought to be asking some of those questions as well. Any other comments? Seeing none, I just think this illustrates exactly why we do the metrics at the beginning before we get into the project updates, because it helps us kind of figure out how to steer the car here. So I think we learned a lot in this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Patrick, when I turn it back to you to take us through the project updates.
Thank you. So again, a similar format for each of these project updates where I will ask a colleague to present the work and what we think we've heard from you and the direction we're going and where we need some help and guidance. Heart of the City, Jamie Rothy from our team has been leading that. Josh Johnson from the city has been our city partner in that process. And I think we're gonna lean on Jamie to do this presentation. You will be hearing from Josh later on. So Jamie, why don't we start with Heart of the City?
And Patrick, can I just sort of do a time check on it? That was a great conversation. It put us about 5-ish, 10 minutes behind schedule. So just if people can calibrate that in going through this, it'd be helpful.
Thank you.
Sorry, having a little bit of technical difficulties. 1 second. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to see you all. I'm here to provide an update for the Heart of the City project. I'm going to focus on 2 things today. I'm going to provide an update on the progress so far, so the business forward strategy and the construction schedule, and then also talk about next steps. We're going to touch base on some different issues we're working through, and then also the inaugural year strategy that we're beginning to work on. So the first update I'd like to provide is regarding the business forward strategy. You may remember from past discussions, we talked about the importance of the strategy and working on this project a little bit differently. We, from the beginning, spent a lot of time with the businesses and the stakeholders in this area around the construction site to understand what was important to them, what did they see as a successful outcome throughout the construction, knowing that it would have a big impact on the front of their businesses. And we learned a lot from listening from them. And so today I'm happy to report that the construction team continues to work through the winter, which doesn't always happen, but it's been a great winter so far for that. Not so much for playing in the snow, but getting construction done. So the team has continued on sidewalks, they continued on sewer access, and they've also been able to do some tree boxes in this weather. The picture on the right actually shows a recent social media post when it was a warmer evening this past month in January, where people were eating outside of Victoria's restaurant along First on the new sidewalk. So that was a really great win to see that happen. The business forward strategy also is a commitment to putting businesses first. In almost every decision that we make, we're trying to make sure that we're keeping their needs in mind and that we're listening constantly. The business forward strategy has 3 portions of it. It's microphasing, our commitment to communications and programming, and then, as you've heard before, our continued pivot and understanding what new business strategies are needed to COVID. As you remember, this project kicked off right when everything started shutting down. So we really needed to shift our strategies quickly and often in order to help the businesses survive the impact of COVID and that it's had on our community. So with that, I wanted to give a couple examples of the business forward strategy in action. This first slide talks a little bit about our commitment to communications. Since the kickoff of construction and actually weeks prior, we started holding weekly Zoom meetings. We were hoping to hold these in person, but of course could not. So they've moved to be virtual. And it's actually been a really great tool. All of our project partners show up for that meeting, along with our community organizations. So the Rochester Downtown Alliance, the Chamber of Commerce, Mayo Clinic, and many others on a regular basis participate in this meeting and provide updates. It's also our business and landowners that are all around that area. And what's been good to note too is that businesses outside of our construction zone have asked to join these calls as well, because they've been so effective at sharing information. And while construction has slowed because of the winter, the Rochester Downtown Alliance has taken on these calls. While we don't have any construction updates to provide, the businesses that were participating found these calls to be really helpful. So they're going to continue these calls all the way through the winter. And then our team will pick them back up again once construction starts again. The image on the right is a quick screenshot of a weekly newsletter that goes out as well. Another part of our communication strategy goes out with all the detailed information, a dedicated phone number so that if anybody has any questions about what's happening or an impact, they have someone that's going to answer the phone and help them right away. I wanted to share a few more examples of the business forward strategy in action. And something that's important to note with each of these pictures is that each of these are part of a response to those listening sessions. We share information at those calls, but we also spend a lot of time listening and responding to the businesses and the landowners' needs down and around that area. So I'll walk through these and they've all been, I'll have such a fun story to share with each of the pictures. The one on the top left, noted as number one.
Jamie, I'm just going to suggest maybe in light of time, not going through each one, but simply acknowledging that these are examples of the suggestions we heard from businesses and how our construction and city team responded.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe just to highlight the one in the middle, which is marked number 2, it looks a little bit different with all of these brightly colored lights all over the construction sites. And one of the things that we heard from the businesses is that construction sites can be scary to walk through during the day and at night. And how do we build confidence as people walk through that? So we partnered with a local lighting and sound firm to help light up the construction site. So it's easily accessible, it looks nice as you walk through, and people are able to move quickly throughout it. And so we've gotten a lot of great feedback from the businesses and users of that area. The next piece I'd like to provide an update on is the current status and schedule related to Heart of the City. You've seen this image before, and it's also in your board packets. You'll see that our team, because of aggressive scheduling, that the team has continued to finish projects or are aiming to finish the project sooner, which is great, with the numbers on the right-hand side. The other thing that's important to note, as we've learned from a variety of different impacts from COVID and other opportunities, is that the plaza will not open up as one ta-da, but because we're making such progress in other areas, we're going to open them up as soon as we can. So streets and sidewalks aren't just closed. We're going to open them up so that we can make sure that we have the limited amount of impact on the businesses in that area. You'll also note that there are things that can impact this timeline, and I wanted to touch base just about a couple of those that we're working through. Of course, winter weather is always a challenge in Minnesota. You never know what you're going to get, and including this weekend, it sounds like we're going to get our first really deep freeze. Our team has taken a lot of preventative measures to prepare for winter. So if you were to walk on the site today, you'd see it blanketed and a variety of other actions taken. So hoping that we can start spring construction as early as possible, but we're constantly monitoring, and then with that also doing as much work as we can now. The two other updates I'd like to provide are related to art. We've talked a couple times about the continued evolution of Ann Hamilton's art piece in the plaza. It's part of the paving structure, and that continues to evolve, and we're really happy with the direction that it's going. Another issue that we're working through is a custom fabrication issue related to Raphael's catenary light system. The poles and the lighting that are related to the catenary light system, as I mentioned, are custom fabrication pieces. And because of COVID, there's some impacts to the time that it takes to build these pieces. So we're working really closely with our entire team to look at how does this impact schedule, what are some other things that we can do related to programming. We're really confident, however, that both of these will have limited impact on business activity as we finalize the next steps of construction. The last piece I'd like to touch base on is a new strategy that we're working on, which is the inaugural year strategy for Peace Plaza. Our entire working team and our community partners have agreed that creating a welcoming environment downtown is incredibly important. And we really want to focus on how do we do that from day one as the plaza reopens. So what we'd like to do is build the strategy together with community partners so that we have an inaugural year strategy that we're building together that has a strong focus on building inclusive public spaces in this space and then also public spaces around our downtown. Our goal is to activate the plaza with passive and active programming on a regular basis. So things that we're considering or looking at are things like scavenger hunt and Anne's piece, or information QR codes about the design above ground and below ground so people can explore the benefits, the interactive design of the art. Active programming could look like music or live art or family programming, inviting kids and families to explore the downtown together and giving them more to do. So with that, I'll just leave you with an image of the current rendering of the Peace Plaza standing east, looking west.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, there is no action being requested with this, simply keeping you current and knowing that you asked us to work closely with the businesses on a business forward strategy, and it hasn't been without challenges. Mayor Norton has been a regular participant, now Council President Carlson, in many of those weekly meetings with the businesses. So it has, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. So when you start talking about the inaugural year and the celebration, you can start to feel that we're looking towards the light at the end of the tunnel. So
I'd like to also thank you, Patrick, who before COVID or anything brought immediately to us in connection with this construction project a plan that was integrated from the beginning on how we'd help small business that could be scaled with COVID. And Member Williams added a lot from his experience. You don't have a lot of gray hair, Paul, but if you did, it would probably come from your experience as light rail went through St. Paul and you were deputy mayor there, and that experience helped a lot. So thanks to everybody for being part of those meetings, and good work.
The next topic then is Discovery Square, and Chris Shad from our team, who you've met before, will provide this presentation. And we're really breaking this into two presentations. One is the economic development portion of the work we're doing, and then the public space element of the work we're doing. And again, we are presenting to you the progress we've made, what you've heard, what we've heard, what you've asked of us, and the work we're doing to achieve those aspirations that you have. So, Chris, would you please take over?
Great, happy to. Thank you, Patrick, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to give this update. We will, we're breaking this up into two sections. We'll have a general update on Discovery Square as a sub-district that's really centered on the economic development activities, both progress and next steps. And then we will transition to an update on Discovery Walk, at which point I will be joined by Josh Johnson from the Rochester City staff. There will be a few points along the way where we can pause for some discussion, some input. As we go, we'll do that, just being mindful of the time. You asked us to diversify the economy by attracting new businesses into downtown Rochester, by supporting entrepreneurship, and to do this in a collaborative way. We believe we're well on our way to delivering on that. Business recruitment activities have been ongoing all along. We now have standing meetings with Mayo Clinic stakeholders for lead generation, for new business recruitment. Residential retail development is upgoing. Discovery Square 2 construction is underway. If you were to walk past there or drive past there now, you'd see structural steel coming out of the ground up on at least the second floor, which is exciting to see. And the One Discovery Square building is now at 97% leased, with proposals out for the remaining space. That is a little bit of a change from the last time that we met. A couple new tenants have made some changes. One is a current tenant is expanding their footprint in the building, and it's not Mayo Clinic. And Exact Sciences recently signed a lease for second floor space. So that's exciting to to hear, and there are proposals out for the last 3%. And in fact, there have been some conversations about space that wasn't intended to be leased, there's a possibility we end up over 100% leased, which is interesting and fascinating in and of itself.
I may just punctuate the exact science taking space in Rochester, and I see Council President Carlson's grin and reaction, knowing the family relationship to that. So that is very exciting news for our community.
Yeah, we're excited to have them there. It's good work, and it's a good company. We're excited to have them part of the community. We wanted to show how do you articulate the economic growth in an area? And there's, we could do it with a list, but we decided we're going to do it this way, that there's a tendency to think of Discovery Square as a place where business development is only in the healthcare sector. And we don't think of it that way. We think of it really as a place where there's opportunity across multiple sectors. If this is what the Discovery Square geography looked like just a few short years ago, this is what it looks like today. And this probably is not complete. And yes, there are healthcare companies in here, but there are also restaurants, there's childcare, there's residential units, there's new retail space that hasn't been occupied yet, but it's being leased. Leasing activities are, our discussions are underway. So it's more than just healthcare and healthcare technology businesses. It's a little bit of everything. And so that's the vision for this space.
Why don't you do that slide? Do those again. I think it was.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but boy, this matters a lot. The idea that we set up from the beginning is let's diversify to the best that we can the economy of Rochester, and
right.
This is really
so before and current, and I won't say after because it could be different in another 2 weeks. So it's exciting to see for those of us who have lived in Rochester for a long time. To see the transformation of this geography. In terms of next steps, so if that's the progress to date, next steps, we continue business recruitment. Mayo Clinic announced a while ago a new research building going up in the sub-district, just a few steps away from the One Discovery Square building. A new parking structure is being contemplated. The real exciting thing is around entrepreneurship. I sort of teased on this at the last board meeting. This collaboration continues. It's really to support, we know we can attract businesses here to expand here, but we also want to be able to support entrepreneurship and really to support startup businesses in any economic sector and build this on the efforts already underway with our collaborators, but in a unified way, unified in a way that we've never been unified before. Just creating these resources. We sometimes think of it as hardware and software. So the space, the equipment, on the hardware side of things, but on the software side of things, the mentoring, the programming, the connections, the introductions. The financial model is being developed. It's probably going to be some combination of in-kind contributions by the collaborators, maybe grant funding, sponsorship funding, memberships. We have to figure that part out. The collaborators, Collider, DMC, Ready, Mayo Clinic, and the Medical Alley Association, all important members of this collaboration.
Chris,
and I imagine this
could
group
I
is
add the city to this too?
Yes, absolutely.
Because we are in the process and have written some kind of fellowship and grant opportunities that we're pursuing as well. And I do think the city is a collaborator in this space as well.
Yes, thank you. I would agree. Thank you. And the list will grow, I think, as we have more conversations, and it has to grow, frankly. So I will pause there. That's where I'm at for the Discovery Square update. Before we jump into the Discovery Walk conversation, if there's any other further comments.
Why don't you put the two together, and then we can ask questions afterwards.
Very good. And I will ask Josh Johnson to be joining us here. He's going to help. He's going to help with this. In terms of Discovery Walk, we sometimes refer to this as the new public realm. You asked us to develop a signature space that connects the core downtown to Soldiers Field and do so in a way that includes robust community engagement. We believe we are doing that, but there are some things today that require your input. Josh is going to be joining us here as part of this. The reality on the left is what this looks like today, a very car-centric, not very many trees, not very welcoming connection point down to Soldiers Field. The aspiration is what you see in the middle, and we hope we believe we are going to reach that aspiration through the design that we're doing so with our partners.
But I'm sorry, I do want to punctuate, as you as board members are listening, there is a point of conversation around some guidance that we're going to need. Yes. Around future considerations. So, but to get there, Chris, go ahead. I just want to be sure people have their antenna up in terms of understanding.
Thank you. Yes. So the community input has been strong. We've heard from our city leaders. We've heard from the arts community. We've got Zoe, Sophia, and Ayub, who are local artists. 2 of the 3 are immigrants. The 3rd is from a family of immigrants. Their art is being integrated into the design. Our community co-designers have been invaluable. And there was a comments earlier about Mayo, I'm sorry, of the city hiring a director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that is Chow Matala, who is part of our community co-design team. So it was good to see her stepping into that role. So that has been really an important part of this process. We have progress to date. Construction documents are 75% complete. Underground utilities, pretty complex. As you start peeling back the ground and understanding what's underneath there, we're finding there are multiple organizations that have to get involved in figuring out how to do this sort of complex dance of upgrading utilities while we have the ground open. So the details and scheduling are being worked on. Some additional features have come out from the communications with the community, and we're going to have a conversation about that in a minute or two. City staff's working on O&M, but like art I mentioned, and Jamie's work with the business forward strategy around Heart of the City. We're taking our cue from that, and we're also developing a business forward version for Discovery Walk around business forward, and not just business retention, but also business growth. And we're doing so with input from the stakeholders. We have a video here, and Josh is going to be our narrator as we do this. I'm going to take the joystick and fly us through a walk down Discovery Walk as Josh sort of walks us or narrates us through. Josh, are you on?
I am. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, as Chris said, I'm Josh Johnson, project manager with the City of Rochester. I'll be our virtual tour guide this morning as we do a quick virtual walk through Discovery Walk project. Chris, if you could just stop right here for a moment, if you don't mind. I just want to get us oriented on where we're at in terms of, where we're standing in the project. So right now we are in the plaza just south of 2nd Street with the Hilton building to the right of the screen. If you were standing here today, you would actually be looking at where the current yellow center line is of 2nd Avenue is actually where the edge of the pedestrian area lands. You can see sort of the bollards area there. So hopefully that gives you or provides a sense of just how much roadway we're actually reprioritizing into pedestrian space. Another key feature that you'll notice is the vibrant blue lights that bisect the entire corridor. This is actually an art installation by our local artist, Sophia. It's called Horizons. And you'll notice as we travel south that the light appears to gradually be changing in height. However, what's happening is the actual elevation of the tops of the structures are staying consistent. So this is meant to evoke the concept of equity in that, as we know, different circumstances require different resources and tools in order to reach an equal outcome. So in this case, the land is acting as the resource to keep the top of the lighting at the same level throughout the projects. The color blue is also very intentional to represent the deep blue skies that we have in southeastern Rochester, as well as it's a nod to the famous architect Eero Saarinen and his design of the IBM campus, which we affectionately call Big Blue. Before you start, Chris, I also just want to acknowledge that Chris mentioned the additional features of the weather shelters. And the first weather shelter is on the right-hand side there along the Hilton building. And it's there to provide some visual interest as well as some seating. And it also takes advantage of, the Hilton has a 8-foot overhang, so that provides a level of climate protection. Go ahead, Chris. So as you're walking, you'll see different features with movable seating, integrated seating and benches. That provides, the opportunity to either congregate or separate depending on what you're doing that day. You'll also notice a much higher increase in plantings and trees and a reduction in the hardscape. Right now we're entering what we refer to as the 300 block. And Chris, if you just stop right there. The key feature of this block is actually the integration of food trucks. So you'll see along the left-hand side of the screen here, we actually have spaces for food trucks. We'll have infrastructure to run electricity, so you don't have the loud noises of the food trucks and the disruption of that. Also, we'll have a much higher element of seating, which right now we do have food trucks, but if you've been there, there's actually, once you get your food, there's very little spots to sit or to enjoy your lunch. So here we'll have seating, we'll have the grassy berms, as you can see to the right there, where you can lay down or read a book, eat lunch, whatever you'd like to do. Go ahead, Chris. I should also notice that when you're seeing these sidewalks, and it looked like it might have started over here.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to move us ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. There's actually two sidewalks running the length of this corridor. So the one here, and then there's a straight sidewalk that runs alongside the buildings. Each are both about 8 feet wide. This is a great spot to stop, actually. So now we're in the 400 block. This is where the I.Discovery Square and the currently under construction Discovery Square 2 is. So here, and you'll see that yellow structure there, that's another weather structure. Here we add an element of urban play. So you'll see some swings there. We also have some natural seating elements, in the form of rocks, some integrated benches. As Chris is pointing out, here you'll see the drastic change in the lighting. So, the lighting's only a couple feet tall here, which is due to this is the highest topography within the 4-block corridor. And this also is the area that Cafe Steam has their plaza. So we're trying to create a cohesive connection between the private space and the public space here. As we keep moving, you'll notice the exaggerated landforms, which help accentuate the changes in topography. Lots of seating. You see the lights are going to actually start increasing in height now as we are actually going down. Right here is a great, if you can pause one last time, Chris.
Right. There it goes.
Yeah, no problem. So this is the last weather structure in the project. And this one is really meant, so on the southern end, there's been a lot of housing units, there's been some retail added. So that's really meant to be sort of a community feature where, whether at the food co-op or at Pascal's or wherever, just an area where you could, come together and meet as a community. But no need to start it over. That was sort of and I've been refraining to say the end of Discovery Walk, but it's really the beginning of the entrance into Soldiers Field and sort of the gateway into Soldiers Field. So yeah, I think that covers it. Thanks, Chris.
Yep. I'm sorry about that. The video challenge is very real sometimes.
No, it was very realistic though.
So some points of conversation then, like any large project, there's going to be some evolution that has to take place. And there are 3 topics that we want to cover here. And I think we, depending on how you want to handle this, Chair Ryback, we could pause at each one of the 3, or I could cover the highlights of each of the 3 and have a conversation at the end.
I think it'd be helpful to put it all together. You guys have done a wonderful job of building suspense for what we need to decide about putting it all together.
Well, very good. So one is a conversation around the deferment of the 300 block gathering space, the base project budget, and then some potential project considerations. So on the 300 block, this is currently immediately south of the Hilton Guggenheim building. It's really envisioned as being a gathering space that a signature gathering space where we can have the food trucks and plaza space. The challenge is that the gathering space extended beyond the public right of way onto Mayo Clinic property. And we've had a lot of conversations with Mayo Clinic and others about this, and have reached a conclusion that we need to defer development of of the private space, the Mayo Clinic's property, to coincide with their future development on that block. We know at some point they will be developing that block. It's part of the master plan, and to invest dollars into development on that space now, knowing it might have to be undone when they fully develop that block, it made sense to hold off right now knowing that it will happen at some point. So not a no, but a not now conversation there. This is the property line of the public right of way versus the private property there. The second topic is the base project budget. The approved budget from 2019 was $16.8 million. And you'll note that at the time, there was no contingency included in that. So the approved budget was $16.8 million. Since then, a standard for the city has been to include a contingency amount in project budgets. So right now, the core project budget is at $17.24 million. And so we're working on the value engineering to resolve that difference, that gap of $440,000. But because of the contingency addition, we have a gap there of $1.6 million for contingency that we'll have to have a conversation with about how we handle that. And then the third part of the evolution is really coming from the input from the community on how we want this space to look and how we want it to function. Three things have emerged as important that we need to have conversations about. One is the weather structures. There's an image of one on the right-hand side. There are 5 that are placed along the length at various places along the length, plus the overhang, that 8-foot overhang that Josh mentioned on the Hilton building. A snow melt system for the 8 feet of sidewalk that run the length of Discovery Walk. And that snow melt is important. It helps with cleaner stormwater going into the stormwater system. It's an accessibility and inclusivity element, and it also, it reduces the operations and maintenance costs for the city staff. And then an extension into Soldiers Field. So rather than going to 6th Street, going through 6th Street and into the Soldiers Field Park. So this not only connects to, but connects into Soldiers Field. And so those are the 3 topics that I think could use some conversation. We could use your input and feedback on those 3 elements.
So feeding that back, there are 3 big things we have to do. One is address this slide, and hold that slide if you could. The other 2 are, how do we address the fact that Mayo is still formulating plans for one of the blocks, and can we delay that? And the second one is this issue of how we handle the contingency. Right. It does strike me that just the slide we're at is the biggest one, so I was going to suggest we start there. But I'm sorry, who wanted to comment?
This is Kim.
Yeah, Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to express a little frustration, and then we'll move on. Having spent the last 2 years since I became mayor on this project, I was very frustrated to hear here at the end, as we're 75% designed and moving ahead with this, that we've had this kind of last minute notice. And so I just want to express my frustration. I hope this doesn't happen again, that these discussions happen a little sooner so we don't spend the time to do it. But having said that, I would say the work has been, it's exciting to see this. For me, this was an important connection to the community, from downtown into the community, and something I think our community will utilize, as well as, of course, the employees and the visitors that come to town. We'll find out that those few blocks really get you from an urban to a suburban and park structure that I think will become even more popular in the future. So just saying, I hope we do a better job with that communication that we need on these projects earlier on in the process. And I do think the community, the snow melt system and the Soldiers Field components are really important, and the weather structures, given our the topography and the weather we have here. I think it's important, but that budgetary concern, of course, is what I hope the board will discuss further.
Mayor, since you've been so involved in this, it's really helpful to get your guidance on that. We're dealing with 3 sort of issues here together. So I wonder if maybe we could do the opposite of what I was suggesting and go back to that first part, because you addressed this delay part. I hear your frustration with it. I also hear, are you recommending that that in spite of that we should, I guess our question, I'm trying to figure out what our question is, to accept the delay, or
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think you're correct in that assumption that it is not worth not going ahead with this 2 years worth of work and prospect. I do hope that the food truck issue can be addressed, because I think that's a component that will be really exciting for downtown if it was to be along this area. But I'm not suggesting we don't do it. In fact, I'm suggesting the opposite and maybe go a little further.
Mr. Chair.
Could we perhaps take a motion that maybe the mayor, if you wouldn't mind raising that, so we could get a topic on the table? So
are you looking for a motion to approve the recommended adjustment?
Yeah, what I'm trying to do is to break this into segments. So Patrick, help us out a little bit on how we can give you the feedback you need. So on this block in particular, I'd like to isolate that question and then bring these others in. So is there a specific action we should take, or simply, express we're disappointed, but we're gonna?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and I note that Member Campbell is trying to make a comment as well. So I just want to be sure that you are aware that there are other members who are trying to make comments.
Yes, definitely. I want to get something on the table that we could use to discuss.
Yeah, I think there is really, I don't know that there's formal action necessary. It is simply to acknowledge that this is, that we are, that this expansion into the 300 block really represents a future phase that would coincide with a future project with Mayo Clinic. And I do want to acknowledge the mayor and I did have a conversation. I take responsibility in terms of how we go about sequencing decision making, and this is one that I think we could have gotten more clarity around a couple of months ago in terms of the right timing with Mayo Clinic, but lessons learned, and that's sort of how we believe we want to approach that. And I see the mayor nodding as well. So I don't think there's any action necessary per se, Mr. Chair.
So hearing that, maybe we should, I don't, Jim, you want to hop in here? I just want to get us focused on what we're voting on. So let's go to the third slide then.
Actually, this is Carlson. I would really like to say something about this slide as well.
Yes, okay, so let's discuss this slide and then we'll put something on the table later. Thank you. So Council President?
Sure. I think
Jim, I'll get there. Jim, was your comment about this?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
okay,
Jim, you go first. I'm still.
So Jim and then the Council President. I'm sorry for being awkward here. I'm just trying to focus our conversation. Go ahead, Jim, and then Council President.
Yeah, as you know, I've been a broken record on this. To me, this Discovery Walk is really critical. It's the connection of the private sector and Discovery Square with the Mayo complex. And, for those of us that spend a lot of time in the Mayo complex and the subway system and the way the climate controlled environment you're in once you get into Mayo, I've always hoped that there'd be some kind of a connection between Discovery Square and the Mayo complex, fully climate controlled. And with this block still yet to be developed, I sort of hope and pray that Mayo will do something really exciting to allow that connection to happen. But it also relates to the expenditure for the weather shelters above ground. And so I just want to state my position that I really hope that Discovery Square can somehow be connected with year-round climate controlled with the development of that block.
Great, thank you, Council President.
Sure, and I'd just like to add, I'm looking forward to conversations with Mayo in the coming weeks about their timeline for this and understand there is a need for delay. I also appreciate that we are trying to have authentic community engagement, and if our community co-designers have recommended this as a needed space in the community and something that will help tie the work to our broader community and bring people downtown as another pedestrian oriented usable space, I think we need to continue to push that something like this at least exists in our future planning. So I'll be trying to continue bringing that voice forward and make sure that it's an ongoing conversation to have this sort of plaza space incorporated into Discovery Walk. Off my soapbox.
So, Mr. Chair,
Go
this is
ahead.
PM.
Yes.
I'm not sure if anybody else is queued up ahead of me, but it doesn't sound like anybody's jumping in. So,
please.
A couple of general comments and then specific comments, just as a, having had some in a prior life, some responsibility for development as well, or maybe in a couple of prior lives. I would just say, I think our method of operation should be about a high level of sensitivity to any property owned by others or any impact of our work to any adjacent property owners. And I don't care if it's the 800-pound gorilla, if you will, of Mayo Clinic, or if it's a small mom and pop shop that's going to be impacted. So, if we are finding that we didn't understand how this would impact their development plans, then shame on us about not having a process that really explored that. And I see that part of our development actually involves Mayo property, or maybe it doesn't, I can't tell, but that green space, it appears that some of it's, the plan is some of it's Mayo and some of it is public property. So I just think coordination is key. The other general comment would be, I would never willingly or knowingly approve a construction project that didn't have a contingency embedded in that work. And so in the future, I would like to just understand what the assumptions are in a project budget that we're asked to approve about a contingency and why the contingency is at that level and who approves the release of funds from the contingency. I would imagine that that's really for unforeseen circumstances, but if it ends up being used to change the scope of the project that we approved, I'd like some transparency about that as well. And so then finally, I think we don't want to waste any money and we don't want to cause disruption twice for anyone that would be impacted either by our work or Mayo's development. So I think the bundling of this work together and the sequencing of the work makes great sense. So that's it.
Good. Other comments?
Sure.
Paul?
Yeah, so one, I think we've known this all along. This is a fantastic green space. I mean, the amount, if the amount of vegetation and green space that is going to be in this corridor, in fact, looks like that, this is really the addition of another park, right into the middle of this this downtown area, which I think is fabulous, and it's the kind of placemaking that really does make places unique and really a draw. I love the concept of expanding into the community and all the way out to Soldiers Field. To me, again, the community has kind of spoken on that. That's a price tag there for that in the context of this project. I agree with Pam on the contingency. Not sure why that wouldn't be in there. That ought to be in there. That 10% figure, right? The original budget was about 16 million, so 1.6 million. It fits with that typical contingency number, I guess, and would like to see transparency. I do recall that I do have a lot of gray hair from the Green Line project. You just can't see it, but the arguments over priorities related to any remaining contingency, and especially the work that went into greening, what we called greening the trench, right, was really, that was important work. So these are important questions, I think, going forward, how we use those dollars. I wasn't part of these conversations, obviously. So to me, the cost of the snow melt system actually is, when you add all this up, it comes up to about $23 million. This is actually 4% of the total DMC budget, right? So, I mean, this is a big ticket item. I think it's obviously critically important, as Jim was saying, to what we're doing here. But I just, when I think especially about what kinds of things are we doing around affordable housing, $2 million actually goes a long way, right, in terms of helping to catalyze multiple affordable housing projects. And so again, my final comment to Pam's earlier question about what don't we do as we make these choices, that is kind of hanging in my mind about how we think about this. So just my 2 cents.
Got it. Other comments? I'd like to add a couple.
I'll just add.
Go ahead, Mayor.
RT, I was just going to add one more, Mr. Chair, and to Paul's point, you know, we have been, the City Council is very interested, this new council, in affordable housing. It's one of their priorities. I have mixed feelings about whether DMC funds should be the primary focus of that, just based on having carried the bill and the discussions that ensued at the Capitol. But the city does have property, and you'll recall the Bloom site from past discussions. I think you were on the board then. We do own land down in this area that the City Council could prioritize for affordable housing that's in the DMC district, but it would be potentially city-owned property. So I think we can perhaps help with our own city funds by reducing the cost of affordable housing because we own the land. So those are part of the discussion. I just want you to know it's this council and this mayor and our administration are definitely focused on affordable housing, whether it's DMC or city funds and or county funds. We're having some really good collaborative discussions.
Good. Other comments? And if I'm not hearing it, I'd like to make a couple. Could we go to the first slide first on it is disappointing that we can't plan more specifically here, but I do think there is one of the magics of a public-private partnership is if you can align incentives. So just as we're talking with the bank on Peace Plaza about how they integrate with this, there's a magic opportunity here when you could potentially see whole walls of buildings opening onto all of this, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's great potential, but I do think in this public-private partnership, I'd like to request that we ask Mayo to come back to the next meeting and talk to us about what they're thinking, both timing and how they would integrate this work with the project. I have high hopes that it will be an integrated work, but I think that's a discussion that's owed to this group as we're making this investment. This is a pivotal key block, and I'd love to have them come before us next time, talk that through, and certainly between now and then, as much as we can, have the conversation take place about what are they thinking and ideally when. And even if that's going to be blank for a little bit, doing the signage necessary and as many improvements as we can, that this becomes continuous. Now, if you could, I think the contingency we've all talked about we need, but can we go to the third slide for a second? Because I think this is where, next one, I'm sorry. Thanks. This is the one that I think is going to be really important. And I think to this point that Paul made about and Pam made about priorities, if you can come back with what can't we do because we do this, I just want to say how high a priority I consider this to be. It is really important to have public spaces. That's one of the key parts of what we're doing. Where does the community come together? Where does somebody who's visiting the clinic become much more part of the community? So Peace Plaza matters a lot, but from the beginning, I've said that this is much more about connective tissue. And that means that a person who comes to the clinic, and Jim, you do a great job of articulating what the experience can be. You can be in a tunnel, you can be in a skyway, that's perfectly fine, but we want them to be able to connect with the rest of the community. And the idea that you had a visit to the clinic and you walk down to Soldiers Field on a phenomenal walk is so wonderful and so important. And that's also how the community feels more welcome, and the university as that grows, and the other housing down there. So having this be a continuous link matters. Our planning to date has not leaned as much yet into the Soldiers Field connection, but we've got to remember, the more you have a there, the more this really creates something. So I'm very high on, especially the second and the third piece of this. I need to understand those weather structures better, and I want to defer to the local people on whether those are working, will be helpful or not. I find a lot of weather structures to be designed for, say, California, where you want to take a little rain off you. I mean, I want a serious weather structure if we want people outside. And ideally, I'd rather invest in heaters or other things. But that's, you know, that's the broad comment. The bigger one I'm trying to make is, I'm sorry, does somebody want to interrupt there?
No, go ahead. When you're done, I just have a process question.
Okay, just real quickly, I'll wind this up. But I do believe we should think very, very strongly about connecting to Soldiers Field, which then connects to a whole lot of, you know, we can draw that to pathways that go all the way to the bluff country. And so I'm very high on that. And I do think snowmelt in with this idea of what is the winter experience like are really high. So I'm very strong on those. So Pam, why don't we turn it over to you?
Well, I just have, first I have a process question and then a couple of comments. But the process question is, I know this is not an action item in our packet today, to think about making a decision on these potential additions to the scope of Discovery Walk. Is our process that would typically go through the EDA, and if it comes from the EDA as a recommendation to the full board, am I right in understanding that would be the process, that these items would be considered by the EDA and we would ask for a recommendation by the EDA about whether we expand the scope?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Member Wheelock, yes. So thank you. We did not bring these forward as action item, as there is continued vetting that needs to go on both with the EDA board, but also with our city partners. And there is a largely new city council who is relatively new to this, comparatively new to this project. And so there is a lot of back and forth conversations we are having, and it does center around community priorities and the very question that you started out today's meeting with, or at least at one point, regarding, you know, what are the trade-offs if we make this level of new commitment. But we wanted to hear from you, and we wanted the community to hear from you, and this is the kind of conversation we were hoping for.
Well, then I'll add, if I could, just a couple of comments.
Please go ahead,
Mr. Chair.
So I did want to address that EDA issue. Do you want to move on to other topics?
No, go ahead. No, please do.
The reason I wanted to just jump in here is that I think there's a philosophical point that's very important. The EDA is an important body to be able to do some of the in more detail work on, say, a development package or something where we defer a lot. But I do believe in public space issues and the common ground. That is very central to our work. So while I think their point of view is very helpful, I think we should assert the importance of public realm being central to our work. So that's my only point.
Well, then I'll move on to kind of the more substantive comments about these options. I think, as Patrick might recall, I actually advocated for the introduction of a snowmelt system on a project in the heart of downtown St. Paul. And so conceptually, I think, given the winter climate in areas where you have high traffic, having that be easy for people to move across distances where there's heavy concentrations of traffic in the winter makes a lot of sense. And I actually think Peace Plaza is a great example of that. My question about this stretch is, I'm not opposed to it, but I guess I'm also influenced by the notion of the Skyway system, and Member Campbell raised that earlier. What we find, like in downtown St. Paul and downtown Minneapolis, is people really prefer being outside when it's nice weather. It's more direct, it's more pleasant, you know, it's it feels safer oftentimes. But when the weather gets really cold or really inclement, that drives people to take the less preferred, less direct interior route. So, you know, one of my questions would be, you know, it's kind of one of these things about, if you build it, will they come? If you add weather structures, if you add snow melt systems, will they actually use it when the weather is really inclement? And the question for me is, well, what's at the other end of the destination that would drive them down there So I just need to understand what's the demand, what's the traffic pattern, what's the opportunity cost, and both the capital and then the operating relationship between the individual parties involved. So I would advise us not to make any decisions right now until we actually get a little bit more shared understanding and information about all of those things.
Member Wheelock, this is Brooke Carlson. May I reflect on what you just were talking about related to street mount? So this is a really interesting question from the city's perspective, because regardless of whether people are using it, my understanding is the city would have to maintain it. So in essence, we're shifting dollars from the DMC being able to cover this cost on the front end to make sure that it is accessible and requires less upkeep, to the city then maintaining it with vehicles or their ways of clearing those sidewalks. So it's not that we're actually saving the cost, we would just be shifting it to future city maintenance costs. Is that, Patrick, is that a direct, or is that how you're talking
That's
about
right.
it in the city?
Yep.
So that's something to consider from the city's perspective. And then also from the inclusivity perspective, is being sure that those sidewalks are safe and people in rollable, thinking about a rollable environment, whether people are in wheelchairs or with strollers, that is an open, easy way to navigate.
Listening to
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, maybe just one follow-up question. And again, I'd prefer we actually don't answer it right now, but I'd like to just better understand where else in the downtown area do we have heated sidewalks? Where else are they planned? And are we changing the standard for sidewalk construction on a going forward basis to put more of them in, and if so, where? So bigger, longer term question, but I just want to understand the context for this particular geography relative to a broader geography.
Patrick.
No, I definitely will respond to that. But could I just say one other thing, that this is so helpful to us because I think it helps us better understand how to tell the story. And one example that comes to me because of your question, Pam, about what's there in Soldiers Field. So because I live nearby, I skate at the ice loop at Soldiers Field 2 or 3 days a week. And so we may not have to build an ice rink in downtown Rochester because we have one. It just doesn't feel like it's in downtown Rochester because it's 4 blocks away. And I think that's part of what I think we need to do a better job at, telling the story of how by doing this, we actually allow us to not have to do other things because they're accessible, they're easy to get to, and they're intuitive.
Yeah. And what you can't see in the image is that just at the corner is a fabulous playground that could be expanded in the future to make sure it's more inclusive of all abilities and ages. And so it's families coming to Soldiers Field that then have an easy, beautiful, accessible way into accessing downtown opportunities as well. So it's not just getting people outward to Soldiers Field, it's drawing community into downtown.
So all of this conversation illustrates why it was a mistake for me to try to get this into a resolution. So I think we've got a good conversation that gets us to a point. I want to finish this if I could with just one set of comments. Pam's comments really got me thinking about withdrawing the point about jumping to weather structures and snowmelt systems. And instead, from my perspective, let me say that I'd like you to come back with a winter strategy in this. And what the winter strategy could be is a lot of things. And I think, Pam, you're very, very right on where people want to be. I also think we should be paying a lot of attention to what's going on this year in particular with how people are using outdoors and experiencing it. And because we're being forced to do things, we're doing some things that are kind of exciting, which is spending more time outside in the winter and really being able to make a statement here. And Peace Plaza, here is a very Minnesota way to do it. Not everybody is going to love that when they're dropping in from somewhere else and it's like it is next week. So we should think about that. as I think about snowmelt systems and the cost, that it costs us almost as much of the snowmelt system as fully extending all the connection all the way to Soldiers Field, if I got that right. We should also go back to the experience that I should be calling on more, which is in the Downtown Improvement District in downtown Minneapolis, does snow clearing that does an extraordinary job of that. It's a smaller ongoing cost, but there's something to that. I also think the Skyway issue is one we should think long and hard about. Skyway and subway. I've been clear before that, and this is going to get me in big trouble in Rochester, but I do believe we should be encouraging Skyway over subway as far as light in winter and everything else. And I've been concerned from the beginning that the Skyway connections here are mid-block. And I think we should really be trying to encourage those, including in the new building Mayo is doing, to front onto the Discovery Walk. The reason for that is that for 30 years, there's been an ongoing debate in Minneapolis about how people navigate with this Skyway system that is totally confusing. And so there's been this effort now to encourage and force developers to put the Skyway in a place where you can easily navigate from street and back and forth. And so I think focusing on a Skyway connection in relation to a pedestrian way that you can navigate in and out of, and it has a winter point of view to it, I think is something we should think about. Anyways, that's a whole lot of stuff from a whole lot of us about something. And I see you coming back to us with this. And I do want to repeat the idea that it'd be really helpful for Mayor to come back and talk about their point of view.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. This has been very helpful and very clear.
Okay, so we took the time it took to have that discussion as we did earlier. And that means we will have a little bit less time on a very important conversation about transit experience. Patrick, let me just do a gut check with you here. How do you think we should navigate the time that we've got here? Because I don't want us to dip our toe into the transportation experience. Do you think we can pull that off today and push others back? This is normally, you guys, what we'd be whispering about up at the dais, honestly,
yeah.
But what do you think we can do here?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think we should have the transportation experience discussion, and then I think we may need to forego a couple of items that we have on the agenda. One item, however, which is a development project that's coming before us. It is an affordable housing development project. It's not ready for action. It might be something that we would ask the board to consider taking up at a special meeting in order to keep timing with that development project. So I guess what I would say is I think we should dive into the transportation experience topic and perhaps forego a couple of other topics, but I want to plant the seed that I may be asking for you to consider a special meeting.
Okay, so stop me before I hurt myself or we get in trouble, Kathleen, but can we adjust the agenda so that we take that one smaller item, flag us on what that special meeting may be about? I imagine that's a 5 to 10 minute discussion, and then we can let the transportation conversation go for the time that we have. Kathleen, is that practical?
Sure, Mr. Chair, you can adjust the agenda as you go,
Okay.
as long as no one objects to it.
Okay, does anyone object to that Patrick would take 5 to 10 minutes to brief us on something that may come up and may require a special meeting? And then we could take a good block of time left on the transportation. Does that make sense to folks?
Sure.
I had just one quick question. Patrick, is there any reason we do need to talk about the small area south of downtown Waterfront, because that is coming up in council near term? Yeah,
I've been at the dais with Cindy from the city communicating about we may need to postpone that for today's meeting, but we will still get it back into sequence with the city council review and approval process.
Okay.
So I think we can navigate that.
Okay. All right, so with everyone's indulgence, and Patrick, give us a top line on that issue you want to brief us on. And then
Sure.
we'll be able to take a good chunk for transportation.
Sure. If we could just go to the next slide. So this is a project that has been briefly in front of you called the Brick Apartment. So that I guess it doesn't say it on this slide, but this is a local developer who has been working on an affordable housing development. We have been in conversation, we meaning DMC and the city, for the past 4 to 5 months, working through details. They're advancing what we think is going to be a very attractive project in addition to our community. The entire project, 180 workforce housing apartments with commercial space located in DMC on a transportation corridor on Broadway. And that as a part of their work, they're pursuing green community certification. And just from a location point of view, it is at the corner of Broadway and Civic Center Drive. So, and this really goes towards a conversation that many of us have been having about not just the term affordable housing, but affordable living, meaning the proximity to jobs, proximity to accessing other resources might mean people can live without a car. And by pursuing green, sustainable building, it could affect utility costs. So this is a project that I think really helps address a goal of more affordable living in Rochester. And we, again, are in process with the city in vetting this project. And we think we might be in a position to come back to you with a formal request for consideration sometime in March.
Got it. Okay, so just to get a sense for folks, what we'd like to do, Patrick had briefed me on this, and what we would like to do would be able to keep this project on schedule, may require us to hold a special meeting. I would certainly advocate for that because of the importance of our focus on affordable housing. Can I get a general sense if that's something you guys are willing to do? Nodding heads, I see.
For sure, yes.
Good. Does anybody think it's a terrible idea for us to have a special meeting for affordable housing? Good. I'm dealing with the right crowd.
Mr. Chair, if I could just chime in, I continue to be really thrilled that we've got a private developer interested in doing affordable housing. The scale and density of this project is fabulous on a transit corridor, and the mix of incomes. Again, we need as much affordable housing as we can get, but this is a fantastic workforce project, and to have this mix of incomes, I think, is really positive. So I'm excited about this. We need more. We needed even lower incomes, but this is a great project.
I agree.
Good. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, this is Pam. I just want to make sure I understand why we would have a special meeting. And just to make sure I understand this based on the material, it's to all of the housing is actually affordable. It's a question at what AMI. So it's to increase the amount of units that would be available at the 50% or below, or 60% or below versus 80% or below. Is that correct?
Correct. Could you go back to that slide where was driving the slide deck? So Pam, I'm not sure I understand your question. Why a special meeting or?
It looks like in the materials, let me just see if I can find it. From our board packet on the bottom of page 61 and the top of page 62, it looks like the developer is interested in having even more units available at the 50 and 60% AMI beyond the 20% and 20%, and that there might be more TIF or DMC funds that would be required in order to accomplish that. Is that the question that we would be discussing if we had a special meeting about additional funding?
Yeah, the question would be simply, the starting point is this a project that we wish to support at what level based on the gap and the pro forma as we are reviewing it? The reason for it to be a special meeting is because of more of a timing question, that our next regular scheduled meeting is not until the end of May. And so we would be hoping to have something in as early as March, so that the project can also then go in front of City Council in April and can hopefully take advantage of this construction season. So that's the reason for it to be a special meeting outside of our normal schedule.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that being said, thank you very much, Patrick. So, so we've shuffled the agenda in a way that now we've got a good 25 minutes to go through the transit presentation. We blocked 40 minutes for that, but I think we're comfortable diving into this. So do you guys want to move forward?
Yeah, so again, we are organizing this presentation as Transportation Experience. I'm going to call on Catherine Malberg from our team to lead this presentation. She'll be joined by Mona Elabadi from SRF, who is our consultant working on this, along with potentially one of the co-designers. And again, and Catherine, perhaps we have to figure out a more abbreviated approach to this presentation so that we can ensure that we get to the discussion.
Certainly, I'll try and move quickly through it. Good morning. Happy to give you an update on one of our mobility initiatives, Rochester Rapid Transit, with a real focus on the experience of using this bus rapid transit line. So first is just a quick context on this work. The projected growth of population and employment in the DMC district in downtown, combined with our fixed street network that exists, will lead to a poor downtown experience for drivers, downtown neighborhoods, and pedestrians if there's no interventions. So I think many of you have seen this diagram before, but on the left is the traffic experience today at key intersections. Oh, it's not showing up right, sadly. These were smiley and frowny faces, but on the right-hand side is what will happen in 2040 without any interventions. And you would, if the slide wasn't a little wonky today, you'd see a lot of angry, frowny faces, basically, if we don't do anything. But fortunately, oh, here we go. There we are. There's our frowny face. All right. But fortunately, we have many arrows in the quiver, so to speak.
I'm sorry. Well, we want to move. Could you just let that sink in for a second, just so we can get where the pinch points are again?
Sure.
One of the things, just in the many years we've worked on this, the issue of 55 and Civic Center Drive has been a real area of focus, for instance. Okay, thanks.
Certainly. So, you know, we have a bunch of arrows in the quiver to tackle this through the multimodal integrated mobility approach that we've been taking for a couple of years now. But what I'm going to speak about here today is one of those initiatives, which is Rochester Rapid Transit. So you, the board, have charged us with a really ambitious goal to deliver a transportation experience that's equal or better to the single occupant vehicle experience. So how are we going to do that? Well, I'm going to start.
Can we just pause on that statement? So this is what we're asking you we've heard you say this is what you're expecting of this initiative, and what we're asking you is, are we delivering based on what you're going to see in this presentation?
And to amplify this, this is where we have said that what we're doing is really competing against the idea that every single person can drive up right next to where they work and get out of the car. It's tough to beat that time one, although that last slide of congestion shows us the time will be harder. So we've got to really, really lean into the idea of experience. Can our climate control be better, and can we be competitive on time?
That's right. So yeah, now moving into how we're going to try and do that. And I'm going to start off with one of the key parts of our project that's helping us get there. And that's coming back to that community co-design process, which has also been a part of this process with Rochester Rapid Transit. So the underlying premise of community co-design is to bring the expertise gained by lived experience into dialogue with the design team to help inform better, more equitable outcomes. So we've invited one of the co-designers on this project to be with us here today and share a few comments with you all. So I'd like to introduce Sylvia Bujak-Oliver, the Executive Director of 125 Live. Sylvia, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Sylvia Bujak-Oliver. I'm one of the co-designers of the Rapid Bus Transit System and also 125 Live Executive Director.
So Sylvia, we'd love to just hear a little bit about kind of who's part of your group and what the experience has been like so far with the community co-design process.
Thank you so much, first and foremost, for inviting me here today and allowing me to speak. Secondly, I just want to share that we have 10 very diverse Rochester residents as a co-designer of this team, and we definitely are the voices of the community. We operate on several principles, which is equity, connectivity, accessibility, safety, comfort, sustainability, and also aesthetics. We just bring experience and voices from the community to the table, and we share our thought process with the co-designers team. We discuss how we prioritized safety features and amenities, and we engage the community of Rochester, and we want to make sure that their voices are being heard.
Wonderful. And I think we have a pause kind of built here. If anyone on the board has additional questions or comments for Sylvia.
Thank you for your work, Sylvia. It's really helpful.
Absolutely. It's been a great pleasure. You know, I love to engage with the community. I met with several business owners, with community organizations. It's amazing to hear how Rochester residents are being involved in this process, and just informing everyone what's happening and allowing the team to be heard and express their concerns, desires, and activate those principles in the real life.
Sylvia, this is Brooke Carlson. Glad you're joining us. Good to hear your voice. And I'm hoping that we can use and continue learning and growing and improving this process as a gold standard with our work moving forward, including, I appreciate that at least I believe the co-designers were compensated for their contributions and expertise. And I think that's a really important part of acknowledging that our community is really bringing expertise into these projects. And I also will say that I'm hoping we can continue to engage people throughout the life of the project, and not just in this early design phase, but really staying engaged and getting feedback and just continuing to stay grounded in the community voice. So thank you.
Absolutely. I think, you know, a lot of designers bring all kind of wealth of knowledge from the places they lived previously. So it's very interesting to hear, you know, obviously, you know, I lived in Europe in several different countries. So it's interesting to hear all other co-designers saying, you know, this is how we imagine things. This is what we need. Accessibility is the must, you know, we need to be all inclusive. We need to be, think about equity. So it's a really fascinating project, and I'm very grateful to be part of it.
Great.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us here today. Really appreciate you taking the time. So now to talk a little bit more about how our design team is utilizing insights from our co-designers, I'd like to introduce Mona Elabadi, Division Lead of Transit Planning and Design with SRF, to walk us through the development of the user experience and some of the features of the project. Mona?
Thank you. Good morning. It's great to see you all. I'm happy to be in front of you again today to talk a little bit about our user experience process. So as Catherine and Sylvia said, I mean, a really key component to making sure that we're developing our design and developing this project correctly is to really take the feedback that we've heard from our co-designers and our community input to make sure that we're focused on the user experience. So one of the ways that we've done that is, you know, through the work and through the input that we've received as a project team, we wanted to translate that into developing a broad spectrum of who are the users that are going to be on our rapid transit system. And so an example that you see of how we're doing that is on the screen. We developed what we call these rapid transit personas, which basically kind of identify a variety of needs that we are trying to meet, and how is rapid transit and the design that we're going through really going to focus on that user experience rather than just really focusing on the infrastructure pieces themselves. So if we can go on to the next slide, I'll illustrate some of the preferred, I wanted to illustrate some of the preferred features that we are Advancing is part of our design, again, based on input that we received from our co-design team. So some of the preferred features that we are integrating as part of the project include a lot of information for users. So on board, real-time signage and information at stations to make sure people are always aware and always able to access information on when their next trip is going to be arriving, and other additional information to help improve the user experience. We heard from a lot of our co-designers that sustainability is a really critical part of this system, and so we're looking at things like electric bus charging and electric vehicles. Level boarding is a key feature which is quite important to make sure that we are providing access to all users with all abilities. Level boarding allows you to roll on and roll off vehicles comfortably, easily through the use of many doors on transit vehicles. Definitely thinking about real-time signage. Again, it helps with the user experience to always feel like they know when they can expect to be on a vehicle. Looking at nice features like in-seat charging on your vehicles to make sure that people really have access to everything that they need when they're making their trip. On the next slide, we have some international inspiration examples. And as Chair Ryback said, we don't want to think about rapid transit as just getting on a bus, but we really want to think about the features that make a transit trip a high quality trip that really impresses people, their user experience component. We're looking at some of the international examples of what kinds of vehicles are out there in the international market. What are some of the features and qualities that are associated with those types of vehicles that we can bring back to our project here? This next slide illustrates some of the features that we are looking at stations to really help improve our design and that user experience perspective. Of course, we're looking at weather protection with station canopies, customer information, lots of security features, lighting, benches, lots of different features to really make sure that that user experience is front and center at each station. So of course, all of this has to tie back to making sure that rapid transit meets Rochester's needs. Of course, rapid transit, what we're trying to accomplish is frequent all-day service. In the transit world, we like to say frequency is freedom. We want people to be able to walk out to a station and know that they're always just a few minutes away from getting on a vehicle and going where they need to go quickly and reliably. We want to improve our comfort at stations by making sure we have good shelters, great lighting, and heat. We know that's an important consideration in our climate. We want to make sure that people feel safe when they're using our system. So of course, lighting has a critical place in the overall design. We also are incorporating emergency phones and cameras and features to make sure that at any time of day, people feel safe at all times. Our boarding is going to be made easier by that off-board fare payment, all-door boarding, and level boarding. Again, really thinking about making sure people have the ability to use the system, regardless of if you're in a wheelchair, if you're using strollers, or if you're fully able-bodied. We, of course, will have kiosks that provide important rider information. And another feature that is an important piece to providing that quality service is a dedicated transit lane and signal improvements to help improve that speed and reliability for users.
That's it. Yeah, thank you, Mona. I think we want to pause here for any comments or questions that the board might have for you.
Can I make a couple of quick comments and then first, if anybody want to jump in before first? First off, I think Mayor Norton had raised the question before about the idea about whether the dedicated lane can be dedicated during peak hours, but not all day. And I thought that was a very strong comment. And I think the experience on Hennepin Avenue between downtown and Lake Street right now is really demonstrating that you can take the lane in peak hours, but then have it used back in other cases. I think another issue that I just want to talk about is I know when you showed that station, you were talking about the amenities and not necessarily what the stations would look like. but we're really looking at about 4 key stops along this. Instead of having a station that gives you a covering, but is still unbelievably cold in the winter, I think we're gonna have to think much more innovatively about arriving at a parking ramp that gets me immediately into climate control, pulling up to St. Mary's where I immediately get in, getting off at Discovery Walk where we just talked about, and getting into a thing. We can't just settle for a wimpy traditional bus stop here. And so I really hope there's more disruptive thinking on that sense of arrival.
And RT, I appreciate your comments. Thank you so much for that. And remembering the issues that I raised before as well. The one issue I've had here that's come up with this this video that we're showing is I don't think on 2nd Street it will be 3 lanes like this. And so I worry that we're perhaps misleading people a little bit with that that picture, because unless there's something I don't know about, I believe they're taking it, as you mentioned, RT, taking 1 lane out for bus only, perhaps only during peak times, and then having it be 2 lanes the rest of the time, not 3, unless they're planning on taking off parking on 2nd. And I haven't heard that yet. So
no,
those details aren't worked out.
No, you're correct, Mayor. And
okay, so I think finding a better picture would be help people if you could find something in the future to show the community.
Yeah, this is Jim. I would agree with the mayor. I've had a lot of comments on some of this. You know, you can't cram all that onto 2nd Street. So I think getting a more realistic picture might be helpful to get the public to buy into this.
Yep, we'll do that.
Okay.
You want to continue?
All right. Thank you, Mona. Really appreciate it. So moving to this last segment here, I really wanted to talk about the expected economic development that will also occur as a part of this transit investment. So along the corridor itself, there'll be more opportunities.
I'm sorry, Catherine, would you just go back? Because I do think this slide the previous slide intends to address the point the chair has made with respect to the connectivity from the station to the ultimate destination of the person's journey. So so more than just the economic development, it also is about once you arrive at a station, how do you get into climate control, or what's the pedestrian experience to get to your final point. So I think we have other images that we could have in a deck like this, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair, to represent that. So just know that we've heard you.
I know you've done thinking about that. I know we're trying to condense all of this, but I'd really like to not see another transit presentation without us fully representing that this is more than just a bus stop. And I know there's thinking on that. And I know we're trying to truncate this time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So yeah, speaking just briefly to the opportunities for development and particularly housing that will have walkable access to this transit line, which improves the diversity of living and mobility choices in Rochester. At the western terminus of the Rochester Rapid Transit line is what we're calling the West Transit Village, which is an additional opportunity to have housing and other amenities directly on the express line into downtown. So I'm going to stop there for any additional questions or comments from the board.
Comments?
Mr. Chair, I would just chime in on how important I think this is in terms of being a feeder for the system and being a kind of an accessibility point for, again, opportunity for affordable housing, but higher density housing and just an area that will be important. So it's almost it's the destination on the other end, I guess, of the transit corridor here that I hope we kind of keep front and center as a real opportunity.
And I think, one of the things from the very beginning, we've been talking about a goal of building no parking ramp without seeing whether we could build housing into it. And that's going to require public-private partnerships. And this is going to continue to be something where we've got to be pushing the envelope about not just saying at some point people could put housing into this, but can we actually tee up a development partner to build that into that? And one of the advantages, the more density we build, the more tax revenue we create, and therefore we could help feed the operating of the transit system, which is something you can do in Rochester, you can't do anywhere else because of the tools the state gave us.
And thank you, Mr. Chair, for saying that. And I heard this referred to as a park and ride on the radio the other day, and that is not
what we're doing.
looking at. So yeah, so I want to be really clear, and I appreciate your talking about this transit village and what this area can and should be and what our hope and dream is. And we have to make that happen, because I really made me sad to hear that.
Yeah, and if I could just speak from a broader perspective, and this is right near my neighborhood too. So thinking about the community context around this is really important. For instance, there's a proposed affordable housing, workforce housing building just maybe a quarter mile further west that's currently delayed, but hopefully will be happening in the next couple of years, and being sure that we're connecting those spaces to this space, so it's it just fits within our broader context, and make sure that people who may not be, or the affordable housing we may not be directly influencing through DMC, is still connected into these transportation corridors. Let's frame it in the community context and not just as a standalone.
Got it.
So if we had the first slide, one of the early slides back on the screen that said the aspiration, the challenge that you put before us is to build an experience that is equal to or better than single occupancy vehicle. I think that's how, again, the lens through which we're working, the city staff, and I should introduce, of course, Aaron Parrish is online, and Jared Hubbard from the city, who's been the lead staff person from the city. That's the lens that we've all been looking through as we've been working on this. And I guess any additional feedback you have, we'll welcome as we continue to move this project along.
Great. And again, I know that we didn't do this justice because of the time compression we had here. Any final comments, Mona?
Catherine,
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Well, I'll just leave you all with this big picture project timeline as a reminder of where we're at today. And I'm sure we'll be talking again soon. Thank you for all your guidance in today's conversation. Look forward to talking about it again.
Thank you. Well, that is great. And again, my apologies for having to do a 40-minute presentation in far less. And but I think you got some good feedback from where we're coming from on that, and we look forward to more discussion. So with that, Patrick, I think should we just move to item 12 there, or do we need to with the EDA? Okay.
There is a brief update with respect to the marketing work that Bill Von Bank is leading that I think is important in the context of this afternoon's discussion. So I've asked Bill to do a shorthand version of what he was prepared to do, but to set up something that will be important for this afternoon's conversation. So if we could take five minutes on this.
That sounds great. Welcome, Bill.
Bill, I don't know if you realize, but we can't hear you. So if you're on mute, maybe I'll just tee this up while we deal with whatever technical issue. So Bill Von Bank leads our marketing and communications work. Each year at this time, we provide an update on the prior year and the metrics associated. This year's report emphasizes the pivot we made with COVID and how it changed our practice. He is also prepared to talk about our 2021 strategy, but in particular, an opportunity that we think is emerging with the new work from anywhere model that is happening across the country. So Bill, are you able to speak?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
My apology, I lost my icons to move forward. So thank you, Chair Ryback, members of the board. I think I'm just going to take us into 2021, your board packets, this was going to be a distillation of what's already in your board packets, the recap of 2020, which was obviously a pivot year because of COVID, but we did bring several new opportunities to play. I did briefly, wearing my marketing hat, want to pitch you on listening to our new communications platform, which is called Urban Evolution, which is our new podcast, bringing relevant topics to DMC Rochester, but translational to the country. Some great, fascinating interviews we've had, most recently with Shay Mandel from Medical Alley, also from the owner and the operator of Crave Restaurants and others. So I encourage you to listen to that podcast. Great opportunity for us to really use this in many different ways moving forward. Just one quick note, as you think about metrics from 2020, I just wanted to show this map, which shows some highly engaged markets for DMC. And you'll see those are some pretty good markets for us: the East Coast, West Coast, Texas, Chicago, Madison, Milwaukee. And so we are, despite COVID and the pivot we had to do in 2020, we did a pretty good job of hitting our KPIs with regard to traffic, and in addition, still hitting some of the key web pages that we wanted to focus on. As we look to 2021 and the evolution, we still see the need to keep our foot on the gas as we look at specifically as we double down on Discovery Square and that ecosystem and space. The life science companies moving further into the digital health nationwide with regard to entrepreneurs and startups, but also retail, dining, and entertainment has become a focus for us. You may recall during the middle of a pandemic, 2 restaurant groups opened in Rochester. Cascade Hospitality opened Crave Restaurants. In speaking with the owner of Cascade Hospitality in our Urban Evolution podcast, he noted that his opening of his Crave restaurant in Rochester was his best opening of any of his 12 restaurants during the middle of a pandemic, 50% capacity. So that's a strong signal for him. We also opened, a new restaurant also opened just recently after that. The Letness Group near St. Cloud opened Old Brick Pub, which is an Irish pub right near Mayo Clinic and close to Peace Plaza. And that also opened during the middle of a pandemic and not being able to be open full speed. And soon they'll be opening another restaurant nearby called Boulder Tap House in the Miracle Mile area. But so these are some key audiences that we have been targeting. But most recently, as you recall or may recall, the news is centering around the work from anywhere group. And the Star Tribune had a really good article just this past weekend on this topic, but it's also a nationwide topic. NPR, Forbes, others are talking about how will remote work affect communities and how might we look at that as a target audience for DMC in Rochester. Both Patrick and I were part of a virtual event with Richard Florida, the renowned urbanist and thought leader, around this topic just last week, hosted by the American Business Journals. You'll see some key takeaways from his speech or his presentation just around the competition factor for communities, not just for business, but for remote workers. And this is really going to accelerate once we get to the other side of the pandemic. And most recently, Tom Fisher, the director of the Design Center at the University of Minnesota, also serves on the EDA board, aligned with this thinking. And most recently, in our conversation with him, we think it's interesting to note, he notes that if you can live and work anywhere, why not live next to the world's best hospital? We think Rochester is really positioned well to be able to compete in this marketplace. If you just look at some of the rankings, not only for Rochester of late, but also for Mayo Clinic, still the #1 hospital by US News and World Report, and certainly Newsweek ranking them the best in the world. So we believe that as we go back to our target audiences, that we should include the work from anywhere audience moving forward. We have engaged our ad agency to give us some perspective. CCF is our ad agency. They've been with us now for several years. They understand the work of DMC really well. They do a lot of work in Rochester. And so we're digging deep right now into what might a target audience look like, and how can we position ourselves, and how can we move quickly in mobilizing around what we think is going to be a competitive target audience moving forward.
Great, thank you. Comments, members? I'd like to say, first off, great work. And I'd also love to see an additional focus on how we integrate with Rochester as the gateway to a region. Denver talks about the mountains. Miami talks about the waterfront. Rochester can really spend a lot of time talking about bluff country, Lanesboro, others access to airport, access to the amenities of the cities, others that Rochester is a destination and a gateway. And having just spent a couple of days with my wife just driving through bluff country and hiking along, I mean, that is a world-class attraction. And we spend precious little time really talking about that as part of the destination here. That's why that trail connection thing I said made sense. You can take a bike there from Rochester, really. But in any case, any other comments? Well, with that, why don't we then, Patrick and Kathleen, unless we have to know anything else, let me just mention the next executive committee meeting is going to be on March 25th at 9:30. Our next regular meeting is May 20th at 9:30. We are all going to go into a discussion of that joint boards meeting that I talked about at 1 o'clock. Hearing nothing else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Second, motion adjourned. Kathleen, do you want to call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Beer,
Aye.
Campbell,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Doherty, Norton,
Aye.
Ryback,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Wheelock.
Aye.
That is 7 votes in favor, Mr. Chair.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for your indulgence on
Thank
a
you.
meeting where we had to shuffle things around, as I said at the time, but I think it's bears repeating. I think we did our transit work and injustice just because of the clock. And so let's make sure that we can come back and give that the due it's owed. So with that, thank you everyone, and we'll see some of you at 1 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.